Yoon Hyunwoo is an average country bumpkin who managed to land his dream job in the biggest and strongest company in Korea, the Soonyang Group. However, on the very first day, he realizes that all of his dreams have been a lie. On the surface, the group looks admirable and the perfect place to enhance your career, but at its roots, the organization hides dark secrets. Soon, Yoon Hyunwoo is forced into this dark world as well. 13 years and a lifetime of working like a dog later, during a prosecution investigation on the company, he is betrayed by the top brass and disposed of without hesitation to take all the blame. However, fate has something else in store for him. Rather than dying, he is reincarnated as one of the grandsons of Jin Yeongcheol, the Soonyang Group's founder, and vows to take revenge on this treacherous organization. The story begins in a beautiful city with an exhilarating nightlife. This city is home to the headquarters of the Soonyang Group. Of course, this isn't just any organization. It's a company with a current revenue of 300 trillion won. Cars, heavy industrial work, food. This company had a hand in all aspects of business and was eventually crowned the best company in Korea. Apparently, a normal boy from the countryside who went to a local university, passed the entrance exam for the Soonyang Group and was invited to join. Obviously, for all reasons, this is cause for celebration. This is about a country bumpkin landing his dream job after all. In fact, his father invited all his extended family for a feast upon hearing this news. But this is all just the tip of the iceberg. The boy was ultimately placed in the future strategic planning headquarters, making him excited beyond measure. It felt as though my chest was about to burst, he claims. Alas, fate is a cruel mistress. Instead of the prestigious desk job he wished for, the role he had in the company was that of a janitor, a cleaner dealing with the annoying and dirty jobs no one else wanted to handle. He doesn't look like any janitor I know of. Despite this, the boy didn't give up on his ambitions and studied to better his position. Enduring all the hardships of his current role, he powered through, and thanks to his perseverance, his position one day changed. So much so that his name became widespread throughout the organization. Even those of the royal Soonyang family recognized him, seeking him out whenever they were disappointed or had lost face. Furthermore, whenever small or big problems arose, they all knew the perfect man for the job, Yoon Hyunwoo. Before you know it, it had been 13 years since Yoon Hyunwoo joined the group, and he reached a point where no one else in the world knew the hidden roots of the royal family better than he did. And just like that, he had finally earned their trust. For example, as we speak, Yoon Hyunwoo was able to transfer $7 billion of secret funds into his account. What on earth? Do you think I could have some? As it turns out, his boss had ordered him to take this money and escape to the Maldives until a prosecution investigation was ongoing. At first, Yoon Hyunwoo questions if it's really okay for him to transfer the money into his account. But that is a pointless question, one that makes his boss laugh. Of course, I may not trust my wife, but I trust you, Hyunwoo, the boss exclaims. They don't seem like words from any decent human, but whatever. From his perspective, Yoon Hyunwoo is the only one capable of handling these funds. And that's how we are here, at the Maldives airport. There, he confidently thinks this is just the beginning of his life, especially since he has now gained the absolute trust of the Soonyang family. But as soon as he lands, he is confronted by two men in black suits. God damn, these guys' faces only a mother could love. Seeing these two, Yoon Hyunwoo immediately recognizes them to be from the secretary's office and is caught off guard. Although these men claim to be here on the president's orders, the fact he was here was supposed to be top secret. Just then, one of them takes him at gunpoint, advising Yoon Hyunwoo to follow him quietly. Hearing this, Yoon Hyunwoo is enraged to no end. No way. You would throw me away just like this? He questions. After 13 years of working like a dog, this is how his hard work is repaid. Alas, he has no other choice than to accompany the scary-looking men. As they ride in the car, Yoon Hyunwoo tries pleading with the two, asking them to call the president. He promises to complete his job and go to South America or somewhere, vowing to never show up until he dies. But his pleas fall on deaf ears. No, rather, the men tell him to stop joking around, reminding him that he can't just worry about himself, he should also consider his parents and wife. These ominous words send a shiver down Yoon Hyunwoo's spine. But the men begin to explain, stating the Soonyang family will grant Yoon Hyunwoo's parents a hefty sum of money and send his wife to America to live without any problems. But Yoon Hyunwoo knows this is all nothing but bullshit. He knows that after they are done with him, they will blame him for all the corruption and give his family absolutely nothing. At that point, won't they just be the family of a corrupt employee who got exposed? It's even possible they will start a property seizure lawsuit, leaving not a penny behind for his kin. Of course, that's how it's always been here. And Yoon Hyunwoo is just another cog in the system. Eventually, the car comes to a halt in the middle of nowhere. There, Yoon Hyunwoo gets out and is greeted by a sunset view of a nameless lake, the very lake that will become his grave. And before he even knows it, the men aim for his head and fire, sending a bullet right into his skull. However, it looks like fate has something else in store. Just as he dies, he is sent back in time as a young boy. In the car with him is his mother, a rising actress, his father, a man who received a passionate courtship from the actress and hid her presence from the big screens, as well as his older brother. As it turns out, it's currently 30 years prior to Yoon Hyunwoo's death, and he has been reincarnated as the youngest son of one of the heirs of the Soonyang Group founder, Jin Yeongcheol. Apparently, Jin Dojin, the one he is reincarnated as, is the family member of the same guy who ordered his death in the Maldives. This makes him wonder what this could mean. In the past, Yoon Hyunwoo never met this family during his time, and this is because they were completely excluded. This was due to the marriage of his parents. In spite of everyone's opposition, they got hitched, making Jin Yeongcheol furious that his son married an actress. But it's not like they had a choice. The marriage continued due to a child growing inside the mother, and hence, this family was excluded. Nonetheless, to Yoon Hyunwoo, this family is amazing. As far as he could see, the other siblings of the group always fought, wanting to earn a little more of the company, but his parents refrained from all this, simply trying to move forward with their lives. This all made him respect this family, though it's still too much to be reincarnated as their son. Yeah, no doubt about that. Eventually, they reach their destination, which turns out to be a mansion, with 3 buildings built on 11,100 acres. It is the mansion of the founder of the Soonyang Group and the manager of many employees, the mansion of Jin Yeongcheol himself. After the founder's death, Jang Namin and Jin Yeongcheol occupied the office, and this is when Yoon Hyunwoo began his first job to weed the gardens. In the past, he came here more than he visited his own parents' house. Regardless, today is a special occasion. It's Jin Yeongcheol's birthday, and so, a party is being held at the mansion. However, as soon as they all arrive, Yoon Hyunwoo notices something. They ignored us blatantly, he comments. The crowd seems to be strangely distant toward his family for some reason. Despite this, they all enter the main house, where Yoon Hyunwoo finds all the relatives already seated. According to him, they are all eagerly awaiting the founder's death, all so they can get a piece of this juicy company. Just as they arrive, one of the aunts begins condemning them all for arriving late. Hearing her speak, Yoon Hyunwoo realizes he knows this woman, deeming her to be the same hag who gated several young boys despite being 70. Remembering these memories, Yoon Hyunwoo begins to chuckle, but all this does is make the woman even angrier, prompting her to cause a huge commotion. And that is when they hear a voice. "Who dares to make such a ruckus in my house?" A regal voice growls. With this, an old man comes barreling down the stairs. Just his presence alone is enough to make everyone quiet down in dread. That is when it's explained that this old man is the dictator of Soonyang, and also the grandfather of Jin Dojin. He's a person that even his kids fear, though that fear comes out of knowing they may not inherit their father's wealth. They dread being unable to maintain their family name and reputation as a chaebol family, hence they are afraid of their father. As per Yoon Hyunwoo, he never met him in person before. Really can't claim to have earned their trust, without meeting the master if you ask me. Nevertheless, as the greeting begins, Yoon Hyunwoo notices something. His brother seems to be deathly afraid of his grandfather, though that's only to be expected, since he's the only reason for his parents' marriage. Moreover, he feels the strong glare of Jin Yeongcheol as well, being rendered unable to even speak. However, out of nowhere, the old man's gaze softens into affection. Suddenly, he begins patting Yoon Hyunwoo on the head, making everyone else incredibly jealous. Of course, the whole time, Yoon Hyunwoo is left wondering, why is he only kind to me? Who knows? Maybe he's friends with Drake or something. Well, we will leave all that aside for now. It's a special occasion. After all, soon, the celebration begins with Jin Yeongcheol blowing out the candles on his 66th birthday as everyone claps. The dude looks good for his age, not gonna lie, probably thanks to that Korean skincare routine. Everyone tries to wish him a happy birthday, and even the other grandchildren get involved. However, Jin Dojin's family seems to be the only exception, looking rather uninterested. Meanwhile, Jin Dojin looks around. and finds his mother being treated like a gopher. The other women of the family boss her around, telling her to do various odd jobs. They belittle her in front of the guests while laughing as if it's nothing. Seeing this, Jin Dojin feels disgusted and enraged. There are over 10 people working already, but despite this, they are making a mockery of his mother. Just then, he recalls the morning when his mother dressed him up, complimenting him on his appearance. Although it's still uncomfortable for Yoon Hyunwoo to live in this body, he is quickly able to adapt, thanks to the kindness his mother showed him. And here are these rich snobs ordering her around as if she is a slave. All this makes him furious, but he tries to keep himself in check, claiming, "Someday I'll make sure my mother is treated properly." With this, he averts his gaze toward his grandfather, whom he deems to be so indifferent due to the coldness he shows his family. In a flashback back inside the mansion, Jin Yeongcheol even gave Jin Dojin a present, a horse toy. Obviously, he is taken aback by this gift, questioning why his grandfather is so kind to him. Did this guy really cast away his son, but start to pity his grandchild out of conscience? Well, that's probably not a bad guess. Nevertheless, seeing how he has been reincarnated in this body, Jin Dojin decides to test just how kind his grandpa is. Consequently, he tells his grandfather that rather than plastic ones, he prefers real horses. Similarly, he wants real cars and boats, not fake ones to play with. Yeah, who wouldn't, to be honest? Hearing these requests, Jin Yeongcheol is stunned and tries to figure the boy out. But still, Jin Dojin manages to leave the old man stumped with his response. After all, he does have the intellect of a 40-year-old. Consequently, the old man reveals that in order to get the real things, Jin Dojin will have to work really hard and undergo many scary and hard times. As a result, he decides on a proposal. He promises to buy Jin Dojin a real horse if he gets an A in all of his subjects for a year. These words leave Jin Dojin speechless. In his past life, he got into a pretty well-known university, and now he has to get all A's in elementary school. It's like taking candy from a baby. Of course, Jin Dojin is confident in his abilities and begins to smirk, agreeing to the terms of the contest. In the present, as he recalls the conversation, one of the associates comes over to him, telling him to go and play in the playroom. However, seeing this guy's face, Jin Dojin is flabbergasted. As it turns out, this is the same guy who called the hit on him. Still, he cannot act. As of now, he is not Yoon Hyunwoo. He is Jin Dojin instead, someone who has to remain calm in such situations. Regardless, the kids reach the playroom where one of the other grandkids is intrigued by the toy horse and begins riding it, pushing away Jin Dojin, who is the owner. Obviously, this makes him angry, but his brother calms him down, telling him to be patient. This makes Jin Dojin realize that his whole family seems used to this treatment, so it doesn't mean he has to be as well. Without hesitation, he goes over to the toy horse, ready to teach the kid not to mess around with him anymore. By doing so, he wants to make a strong impression on his grandfather. With this, he tells the boy to get off, claiming the horse belongs to him. But being the spoiled little kids they are, the other refuses and instead starts laughing at him. As a result, Jin Dojin kicks over the horse, sending the boy falling down. Furthermore, the horse falls on the kid's leg, pinning it to the ground. This causes him to scream loudly in pain. And while the other kids go to call the adults, Jin Dojin closes in on the victim, telling him, "Never touch what's mine again." Bro thinks he's tough after threatening a kid. Moments later, the adults come rushing to the room, and Kangjun, the victim, is cuddled by his mother. On the other hand, Jin Dojin looks over to see his mother in a surprised state. However, the show is just getting started. Out of nowhere, Kangjun's mother begins slapping him, deeming him to be a complete nutcase. Hitting him repeatedly, she questions how he dared to hurt her son. But just then, Jin Dojin's mother intervenes, shielding her boy using her body. She tries to stop the situation and apologizes to Kangjun's mother. However, the situation causes a huge ruckus, and hearing the commotion, Jin Yeongcheol comes into the playroom as well. Upon his arrival, he tells them all to stop making a fuss in front of the guests, ordering Kangjun's mother to go and get her kid looked at in the hospital. Moreover, he tells everyone except for Jin Dojin to leave, and after getting the room all to themselves, he asks why the boy did something so dangerous, even going so far as to hurt his older cousin. In response, Jin Dojin announces, "That horse is mine," explaining it as a gift from his grandfather. But Kangjun tried to steal it. This is why he broke the horse, revealing, rather than it being taken away. I don't want anyone to have it. Having made his statement, he then waits to see his grandfather's reaction, and just like he thought, he is visibly impressed. To him, this is exactly what Jin Yeongcheol wants: spite, the kind that a kingdom's leader has to not be deprived of even a handful of his territory. Despite this, the fact remains that Jin Dojin has hurt one of his own, meaning he must be punished for his actions. As such, Jin Dojin is told to follow, and he obliges, smirking the entire time. However, his smirk is quickly turned into shock when he reaches his destination, a gigantic office room. According to him, this is the place where the real decisions are made, a place where only the heads of the affiliates who lead the family and influential people can come and go. Despite having worked as a servant for the family for 13 years, he has never been inside this room before. If so, why on earth is he here now? I can't believe I came here, he thinks. You also probably didn't think you were ever going to get reincarnated, but here we are. And so the meeting begins while Jin Dojin is left to sit on the floor in silence the entire time. There, he notices that his killer, Jin Yeongcheol, the eldest son of his godfather, is also present. This comes as a big surprise, considering the president didn't even involve his own son, but chose this 20-year-old instead. Does this mean he's already in place as the successor? He begins to wonder. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Nevertheless, Jin Yeongcheol addresses everyone, telling them to reveal what they think will happen in the upcoming future. One by one, everyone starts sharing their opinions. They talk about the chances of the current government collapsing, commenting on how the army will also have to be involved inevitably. As the adults start their meeting, Jin Dojin is left confused about what on earth is going on. However, eventually he realizes the men are discussing political affairs outside of the company. Suddenly, one of the members comments on how everything is not black and white. In light of recent events, the masses have started to protest, and a whopping 1 million people have gathered nationwide today. If they consider the army getting involved, the number would reach 2 million. As things stand, the situation is fanning the anger and fury of the people, and if these flames become out of control, the people might take a step back, fearing repercussions. Nevertheless, if the army is deployed, it will only pour oil on the fire. But hearing all this, Jin Yeongcheol is not satisfied. So what? What are you trying to say? He angrily questions. If this is how things are, should they just prepare for the collapse? Is there even any certainty that the next president will come from the opposition? In response, the man claims that's just what might happen. But Jin Yeongcheol is pissed off even more. Red with rage, he slams his fist on the table, announcing he has no time to waste on these might or might not stories. He wants something concrete, no ifs, ands, or buts. As a result, the man is left speechless and apologizes. I guess he isn't the boss for nothing. Consequently, Jin Yeongcheol then turns his gaze towards the vice chairman, asking him what rope the company should grab onto, leaving him taken aback. As it turns out, the vice chairman and Jin Yeongcheol are both responsible for shifting the blame on Yoon Hyunwoo and getting him killed, though it's not the right time to take revenge. Regardless, the vice chairman has to answer, and after thinking about it for a while, he confidently states that the current government is not strong enough to survive. Sure, they have been in power for 7 years, but there have been countless protests in response. Needless to say, it hasn't been smooth sailing. Therefore, at least in the vice chairman, things seem dim. Hearing his arguments, the others also gravitate towards him, backing up his idea. Just then, Jin Dojin notices something strange. It's only 3 days until the president has to declare surrender. At such a crucial time, government officials should have made some profiles of the candidates by now. But what's strange is that the Soonyang Group doesn't have any important information. While the adults talk amongst each other, Jin Dojin remarks on how strange this scenery is. No matter how messed up the country is, all these guys want to talk about is which rope they should stand behind. A place like this is meant for discussing management strategies and plans to cope with the future, but he has been let down. At the very least, he expected conversations so intricate that normal employees would lose their minds. Alas, the meeting ends with no clear conclusion. Soon, Jin Yeongcheol orders everyone to return and vacate the room, telling them to go gather as much information as they can for now, and the others oblige, bidding farewell to the founder before walking off. Until the end, all they talked about was who to follow. Anyways, now that the room is empty, Jin Yeongcheol tells Jin Dojin to stand up, though when he does so, he begins to stumble. After sitting on his feet this entire time, his His legs are numb, making it hard for him to walk. Weakling, go to the gym or something. Seeing this, Jin Yeongcheol is impressed, telling his grandson he is proud of him. The fact is, the boy managed to sit quietly in that position, without showing any signs of discomfort, something even grown-ups would end up fidgeting during. You stayed upright, he tells him. Of course, this wasn't Jin Dojun's intention at all. He was merely invested in the conversation, so much so that he didn't realize his leg was numb. Fortunately, it ended up working in his favor. Lady Luck seems to be on his side. Despite this, there is something that Jin Yeongcheol is curious about, and he asks how Jin Dojun has changed so much. Hearing this, Jin Dojun immediately realizes this is bound to happen. Until now, he was a shy boy with a passive appearance, but out of nowhere, he has suddenly changed, so there is no way it would go unnoticed. But he decided to use this as his chance to his favor. I don't want to just tolerate it anymore, he announces. He claims that if he acts here a little bit, it will help him in the future, and he explains he doesn't want to endure being cast aside any longer. And his plan works out. All of a sudden, Jin Yeongcheol hugs him tightly, making Jin Dojun glad that his idea has worked. However, he decides to push it even further. Befriend all of them, he advises his grandfather. To him, if the president of the country is the strongest, it's best to get on good terms with all three candidates. This way, no matter who comes out on top, Soonyang will always be victorious. Not to mention that all three candidates would end up becoming good friends for the company, especially since they are powerful enough to become the president on their own. The more, the merrier, as they say. This response leaves Jin Yeongcheol speechless, though he soon bursts out laughing. Nevertheless, this marks the end of the ordeal for now. Jin Dojun is told to go play, and also to call Youngjun to meet the old man. As such, Jin Dojun takes his leave, whereas the chairman calls his assistant, telling him to take good care of all three candidates, if you know what I mean. So basically, bribery then. Someone called the police. To him, it was completely unexpected that this brilliant idea would come from a 10-year-old. Regardless, soon, Jin Youngjun knocks on the door and enters to answer his summons. Inside the room, Jin Yeongcheol asks his eldest grandson what his opinion is on the circumstances. Obviously, Jin Youngjun is flustered being asked this head-on, though he makes his case. But when Yeongcheol tries to put a little pressure on Youngjun, he easily buckles, not even willing to bet on his own conclusion. This disappoints Yeongcheol, who cannot see the same potential in his eldest grandson. As such, he orders him to leave while leaning back in his chair, wondering why. Out of all the people, it had to be the youngest. To him, at least, it would have been better if Jin Dojun was the eldest instead. Damn, the old man really is heartless. Anyway, the party soon comes to an end, and Jin Dojun, along with his family, heads back to their home. On the way, it's revealed that Yeongcheol has offered to help more with the children's studies, though the elder son is against being tutored by his grandfather's tutor. Of course, Jin Dojun also has some qualms about the situation, but he cannot refuse since it's insisted on by the founder. Therefore, he agrees to take part. On the other hand, his brother calls out to him, telling him he did a good job today. Of course, Jin Dojun is confused about what his brother is saying, but apparently it's about how he made that spoiled Kanjun cry. Hearing this, Jin Dojun understands that, although it might not look like it, his brother had a lot on his plate too. 3 days after this incident, like clockwork, the president goes on live television to announce his departure from office. Obviously, this declaration didn't belong to just him, but rather to the whole government council, paving the way for the new generation's race for governing power to start. However, none of this intrigues Jin Dojun, who is more interested in learning how his grandfather will react to this situation. Eventually, he gets dropped home from school, and as soon as he enters, the gardener tells him that Jin Yeongcheol is here to visit, though it's not a big surprise since he already expected this to happen. Just then, they hear an argument from the house. Inside, Jin Dojun's mother is seen adamantly refusing the shares of the Soonyang Group offered to her. According to her, her husband feels the same way, and neither of them plans to change their minds. However, this is precisely what triggers Jin Yeongcheol. She tries to explain herself, stating that Jin Dojun is still only 10 years old and too young to be involved with the company's work. What she wants is for him to reach adulthood and decide what he wants to do with his life. But Jin Yeongcheol grows more and more angry. He questions if she knows what she's refusing. As it turns out, the company's shares mean that the old man was willing to take Jin Dojin's family back into the trade, but here she is kicking away the last opportunity he has given to them. Nevertheless, Jin Dojin's mother doesn't budge at all, claiming she wants her son to live his life, doing what he wants to do. Alas, Jin Yeongcheol has a habit of getting whatever he wants, making it infuriating when he is unable to do so. In layman's terms, he's just a big baby, causing tantrums whenever things don't go his way. Just as things start to escalate, Jin Dojin decides to make his entrance and comes barging in, acting surprised after seeing his grandfather here. Seeing him arrive out of nowhere, Jin Yeongcheol also changes his tone immediately, showering Jin Dojin with affection. His personality does a complete 180, and he joyfully lifts Jin Dojin in the air, making both him and his mother a bit shaken. As he gets tossed around in the air, Jin Dojin thinks about his timid mother, who was unable to say even a word in front of the family dictator, yet still fought back for her son's sake. Such a heartwarming scene leaves him touched, growing his admiration for his mom. Anyway, wanting to keep up his childish act, he asks if his grandfather is angry, but Jin Yeongcheol, surprised by the question, refuses. Even Jin Dojin's mother backs him, trying to dismiss the situation. Obviously, they aren't fooling Jin Dojin in the least, and he simply tells them both not to argue because of him. According to him, he plans on following his mother's wishes and living like he wants when he reaches adulthood. Hearing this, Jin Yeongcheol is visibly disappointed, though this was all part of the young genius's plan. Judging from his reaction, Jin Dojin has finally broken his grandfather's tough guy image. The man feared by the whole of Korea has become disheartened at the words of a child. With this, he then expresses how he wants to grow up just like his grandpa. "I want to be the chairman of a big company," he exclaims. Hearing these words, Jin Yeongcheol is astonished, though he cannot contain his laughter. To him, it's evident that the young boy cannot resist the bloodline, commenting on how there are cases where the bloodline skips a generation. This guy really is a narcissist. Still, now that he has gotten the approval of Jin Dojin himself, he turns to the boy's mother, remarking on how she must not have anything else to say. During this, he even calls her daughter-in-law for the first time, leaving her in tears. Trying to hide her emotions, she tries to flee the situation. Meanwhile, Jin Dojin notices this and deems this to be the result of affection. This might be the first time this old geezer has called her something other than you. Regardless, Jin Yeongcheol and Jin Dojin then head into Jin Dojin's room, where they immediately begin discussing the last meeting. He explains that, as Jin Dojin said, he made sure to become closer with all three candidates, but now, the situation has taken a strange turn. As per him, those three have started to fight with each other. The second and third candidates have teamed up together to defeat the first, so the group can now only choose one person to set their hopes on. But this couldn't be further from the case. Jin Dojin asks if the second and third will then join hands and become the leader and vice leader, but there's no way that's going to happen. There is no vice boss in this country, only the boss. But that is also precisely why the candidates cannot join hands. The fact remains that even if they overwhelm the first candidate, only one of them will become the boss. Hence, the third has nothing to gain by helping his contender, and the second will never help without any clear basis. Even if the 10th or even the 20th contender might help, there is no way the third ever would. Such is the human psyche. Hearing this explanation, Jin Yeongcheol is left astonished and goes into deep thought. On the flip side, you might be wondering how Jin Dojin knows all this. Well, duh, of course. He knows. He's from the future, you idiots. For him, there is no need to be verbose and detailed about the future. All he has to do is provide another perspective. He's confident that the founder of the Soonyang Group will know precisely what to do after getting this information. Back toward Jin Yeongcheol, who realizes there can be no one else. The Soonyang Group's presidential team and influential members all had doubts about the unification of the candidates, but Jin Dojin was the only one who was outright with his idea. It's possible to think of this plan since the political situation and flow are uncertain, but Jin Dojin was able to see through human greed clearly, revealing the story without any evidence. Overjoyed, Jin Yeongcheol begins to pet Jin Dojin, complimenting his intellect. And so, this brings an end to this ordeal. A few days later, we see him traveling alone to a place called Dongjin. As it turns out, he read this is the only place in Korea where the sea touches the northern terrains, and he told his parents he wanted to see it in person, ultimately managing to convince them. Of course, this is not the real reason. In reality, He wants to see just how the Yoon Hyunwoo of this time, is doing. Soon, he reaches his destination, the place he grew up in his past life, but becomes extremely nervous and anxious. In addition, after catching a glimpse of his former mom and dad from the window, his heart feels relieved. Out of nowhere, he begins to cry, reminiscing about his past life. Seeing a child crying outside the store, Jin Dojin's former parents come outside to see what is happening. Here, Jin Dojin makes up a story about how he is here to see a friend, asking if Yoon Hyunwoo lives here. But, much to his surprise, they claim there is no one with such a name living here. They even ask if they should ask Hyunji, if this Hyunwoo is a classmate of hers or something. But Jin Dojin has no idea who this girl is. As a result, he questions who Hyunji is, learning she is the daughter of these two store owners. Finally, after an intense contemplation session, Jin Dojin finally realizes the situation. This person Yoon Hyunwoo doesn't exist in this world, he exclaims. Now that's a plot twist, if I've ever seen one. In the following days, time seems to pass quickly for everyone. At Jin Yeongcheol's office, he reads the newspaper, astonished at how accurate Jin Dojin's predictions have been. A few months earlier, after the current government declared surrender, all the large companies began cozying up to Yeon Kim, the next potential president. He hadn't expected any news of unification, but after listening to Dojin, he realized the significance of the situation. To think Dojin's idea would become such a big help to our company. He chuckles to himself. Back at Jin Dojin's house, he, too, reads the morning paper, relieved that everything is progressing just as it did in the past. But he knows better than to let his guard down. The fact that his former family didn't give birth to Hyunwoo means the details of the future might change. In fact, haven't things already begun to change? Jin Yeongcheol has grown to like Dojin, which alone is enough to alter the future. If things continue this way, Jin Dojin's most powerful weapon, his knowledge of future events, might end up becoming useless. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Dojin's plan is to establish a foundation big enough to swallow the Soonyang Group by the time he turns 20. In about 10 years, Jin Yeongcheol's health will start to deteriorate, and he will slowly wither away in a hospital room. Before that happens, Dojin must gather as many shares as possible to give his family a fighting chance against his godfather, the vice chairman, and his son, Jin Younggi. More importantly, before his 20th birthday, he must also prevent the car accident that previously claimed his life. Apparently, in the past, an accident not only ended Dojin's life, but also destroyed his family's future prospects, pushing them so far down the corporate ladder that no one cared about them. Unfortunately, he has no useful information about them, leaving him in the dark. Nevertheless, first, I must avoid my own death, he thinks. That would probably be for the best. Just then, there's a knock on his door, and his mother enters, informing him that it's time for his appointment. With this, he leaves the room, claiming that there is no certain answer to his situation. All he can do is keep on living carefully, considering the consequences that his actions might bring. Regardless, he's dropped off at SY Hotel, a high-class resort owned by the Soonyang Group. Inside, Jin Yeongcheol is waiting for him, and after greeting each other joyfully, they head to a private room. Dojin suspects this meeting must be related to recent political developments, but decides to play dumb for now. He asks why they are there, and with a stunned look on his face, Yeongcheol begins to recall a phone call he received earlier. As it just so happens, the winning candidate called Jin Yeongcheol and promised never to forget his help during this troublesome time. As such, Dojin is being treated as a gesture of thanks for his recent assistance. Still, Dojin continues his act, remarking that Yeongcheol must have heard about how he got straight A's in all his tests. Hearing this, the old man is reminded of their promises and bursts out laughing, commenting that they literally can't buy a real horse at this time of night. What use is all this wealth when you can't even buy a horse whenever you want? Of course, for Dojin, a real horse is nothing but a pretext, a means to gain even greater things. As a result, he states that the horse can wait, since he doesn't even know how to ride, after all. Nevertheless, now that he has helped his family make a fortune, it must mean he will be given even better things in the future, and Yeongcheol confirms this, though he is stumped as to what could be better than a horse. Yeah, that would be my question too. How about a mansion in LA? That would suffice, I think. Suddenly, waiters enter the room, bringing a feast along with them. As they start eating, Yeongcheol suggests giving Dojin a pasture, since he can't really ride a horse in the city. But this is exactly what Dojin was aiming for. In his usual childish tone, he thanks his grandpa, hugging him tightly. However, this is only the beginning. Dojin then inquires where the pasture will be, but after learning it's in the north, he refuses. On the surface, he claims it's too far from his house, suggesting it be in the south instead. But as Yeongcheol points out, there are no places for pastures in the south, so Dojin suggests they simply make one. After all, his grandpa is great at making things quickly. Entertained by the suggestion, Yeongcheol starts laughing yet again. This time, Yeongcheol recalls a story from his past. According to him, out of the 48 branches in the Soonyang Group, he only bought 19 of them. The rest were taken over, he says. The companies he acquired were also in the early stages of development. From his perspective, it's important to make everything yourself, since that's how you build connections and grow bigger. This is why he takes a liking to Dojin's plan, to simply make what he wants. That's why he decides to step it up a notch. Fine. Dojin's first steps. I will help you start it, he proclaims, leaving Dojin bewildered. Yeongcheol orders a map of Gyeonggi and Seoul, and upon receiving it, asks Dojin to mark where he wants the pasture. This is precisely what Dojin was waiting for. With his knowledge of the future, he can choose land locations that will skyrocket in value, ensuring long-term stability for him and his family. Although there are a few reservations, Dojin quickly marks out the suitable area. Delighted, Yeongcheol immediately orders for the land to be assessed before they resume their meal. Moments later, information on the land is already available. The area is reportedly filled with cucumbers, melons, and other crops. Additionally, the infrastructure is poor, making it difficult to access, and the locals are all poverty-stricken. Because of this, it is said to be a low development opportunity. Hearing this, Yeongcheol thinks they might actually be able to make a pasture, and after a long, hard-thinking session, orders his assistant to buy 50,000 acres of land immediately. Goddamn, the old man sure is rolling in dough. Seeing this, Dojin couldn't be more ecstatic. However, Yeongcheol isn't too thrilled. To his eyes, the land is just a pile of sand, and if it were him, this wouldn't be his first pick. Despite this, building on it might not be a bad call if it's Dojin making the decision. After all, he is just a child with a long lifespan ahead of him. During his life, the land could become worth several times more. Of course, this is exactly what Dojin wants to do. But waiting 20 years is not going to be necessary, especially since this land in 2 years will become the new Bundong City. Not to mention, Dojin will be the owner of 50,000 acres of this prime real estate. As the days go by, Yeongcheol is one day visited by his daughter Seo Yoon and her husband, Choi Seo-bong. It's revealed that these two want his help in running for office in Jonggro, claiming his position and popularity with the middle class will surely prove beneficial to Yeongcheol in the future. However, he's not too keen on the idea. In the first place, he has pretty deep pockets, deep enough that the lawmakers of Jonggro would come to meet him at dawn, if he were to call. Because of this, he is satisfied with the current Suwon lawmakers he has. In addition, it won't be difficult to win the election without any further expenses, since the Soonyang Group's factories and subcontractors are plentiful. Hearing this, Seo Yoon appears to be offended. From her perspective, it sounds like Yeongcheol is saying her husband isn't worth spending money on. And that's precisely what Yeongcheol wants them to feel. Damn, that was brutal. As it turns out, Choi Seo-bong already had a clear path toward becoming a general attorney, but he was the one who blew his shot by attempting to become a member of the National Assembly instead. Hearing this, Choi Seo-bong begins to apologize, whereas Seo Yoon doubles down. She adamantly claims that her husband is not someone who deserves this sort of treatment. After all, his family is one of the best legal families in the whole of Korea. Even without funding from Soonyang, they are more than capable of getting elected, regardless of the opposition. But this statement makes Yeongcheol chuckle. The best family of lawyers in Korea? He asks. The fact is that he raised Choi Seo-bong to his current position, with his own money and influence. Without this, he could never hope to become the chief prosecutor. And do you know why that is? Well, just so that he can become the lapdog of Soonyang and defend their group whenever necessary, having his life dictated and ambitions trampled on. Choi Seo-bong is visibly agitated, but holds it in. Of course, that doesn't make Yeongcheol back off. Instead, he provokes him even further, telling him to cease his useless thoughts and just suck up the luxury he has been provided. He even warns the man, explaining that if he continues to be greedy, he will end up a ruined person. That just goes to show how much power this old man truly possesses. enough to get his son-in-law the position of chief prosecutor with just one word. Alas, the show is far from over. With this, Yoon Hyunwoo then turns his attention to his daughter. He has already noticed Seo Yoon's plan to advance her husband in politics in an attempt to gain power and somehow get rid of her brothers, who are planning on taking over the group. Busted already? Realizing this, Seo Yoon immediately shows guilt and apologizes. Consequently, she is told to be content with what she has, with Yoon Hyunwoo explaining he plans on getting rid of Seo Yoon's department if it shows any sign of decline. With this, the powerless couple barges out of Yoon Hyunwoo's office, angry and annoyed at their failed attempt. All the while, Do-jun is sitting leisurely outside the office, happy to see the greedy couple have their efforts wasted. Though he too has disdain towards them. Who wouldn't though? They plan to push out their family and abandon them to take over the company on their own. A plan vile enough to make your stomach turn. Despite this, Do-jun isn't too worried about these lowlifes, suggesting it should be easy to take care of those people leisurely. Suddenly, Yoon Hyunwoo also steps out of his office and begins making small talk with his grandson. There, he hands Do-jun an envelope, revealing it is the legal documents for Do-jun's pasture, a hopping 80,000 acres of land. Bro, how can I get grandpa like that? Is this family adopting? Seeing this, Do-jun is over the moon, especially considering how the number went up from 50 to 80,000. Regardless, he questions why there is more land than what they previously discussed, a question Yoon Hyunwoo likes. According to Do-jun, that's only to be expected, since being good with numbers is the most basic of the basic skills one must possess to be good at management. To this, Yoon Hyunwoo explains there were a lot of owners ready to sell their plots, and thus, the increase in acres. Obviously, though, Do-jun isn't complaining about it and is, in fact, happy as can be. There's no way I wouldn't be happy, he claims. This is his ticket to becoming ultra-rich, and he has started making investment plans already. Furthermore, he gives his grandfather a hug, even though it's clearly just an act. Well, what the old man doesn't know won't hurt him. As luck would have it, the year 1988 was great for the Korean economy. A new, sternly elected president took office and introduced many proposals to better the relationship between Korea and the USA. This caused the exchange rate to skyrocket, creating a housing boom and sending the housing prices through the roof. Alas, the world isn't all sunshine and rainbows. The government, unable to keep up with the real estate sector, announced a plan to build 2 million homes for its citizens, and a large-scale development industry was created. However, despite all their efforts, the prices remain unstable, ultimately leading the government to announce a new city, right in the middle of where Do-jun's pasture is going to be. And just like Do-jun predicted, his land skyrockets in price. Even Yoon Hyunwoo is astonished by the 100x return on the investment, that too in just a year. Moreover, he tells his secretary, Lee Hak-jae, about how Do-jun insisted on this place, despite Yoon Hyunwoo's opposition. All of this, although good news, makes the old man worried. He tells Hak-jae to take good care of Do-jun if he becomes a businessman. According to him, if he leaves Do-jun a few companies as an inheritance, the others will try to steal them away from him, and hence, he orders Hak-jae to prevent this from ever happening. This guy isn't all bad. Meanwhile, Do-jun is freaking out about his wealth. Thanks to his utilization of space, he has managed to get 14 billion won from his land, leaving 20,000 acres or 10 billion won worth still left. What's more, if he holds onto the remaining acres, they could shoot up in value again. As he geeks out over his new fortune, he suddenly hears a knock on his door, and it turns out to be his parents, who want to have a chat with their son. Inside the room, Do-jun's mother asks what he plans to do with the money, but he evasively says he wants to save it in a bank. He already has everything he needs, thanks to his parents, and instead, he wants to know what his parents want him to do with the money. However, hearing these words, his dad suddenly gets up and leaves. Seeing this, Do-jun is taken aback, but his mother tries to comfort him before rushing over to her husband's side. In the front yard, the parents both chat with each other, and the dad explains why he left. It wasn't that he was angry, rather, he was embarrassed. After hearing about the sum of money Do-jun has gotten his hands on, he couldn't help but think this was their chance. He became a father who drools over their kids' money, something he never wanted to be. It's too shameful, he proclaims, but that's only natural. With such a sum, even the mother was tempted, thinking it would be enough for their entire family to move abroad and live peacefully. All the while, Do-jun is secretly eavesdropping on their conversation and begins to smile. commenting on how his parents are people with so much love for their kids. I wish I knew how that felt. My dad left for milk and never came back. Later that night, Dojun decides to apologize to his father. However, from the looks of it, his father doesn't seem to be angry. His father claims he was just surprised and asks his son what he plans on doing in the future. Dojun reveals that he is planning on doing what he wants to do to become the chairman of a company even bigger than the Soonyang Group. Hearing these unexpected words, Dojun's father cannot control himself and begins to laugh out loud. Well, that's only to be expected. The fact is, Soonyang is the #1 company in the entirety of Korea, and it's no surprise anyone would laugh at a child's ambition to build something even bigger than that. Even his father comments on how this dream is a little too big. Nevertheless, that's exactly why Dojun needs his father's help to accomplish it. Obviously, though, his father has no interest in these tasks. He has no interest in managing companies, and hence, he cannot help his son very much. Although he did study management at an elite university in London, he wants to live out his remaining life buried in his beloved hobbies, aka movies. Just then, Dojun chimes in and asks his father if he has any friends he studied with, implying that he wants to meet them. Meanwhile, at the SY Hotel, the vice chairman learns of Dojun's recent endeavors and is taken aback by the child's accomplishments. There, Jin Yeongcheol also seems to be present, and he slyly remarks at how envious the boy's position is. Even if he just puts his money in the bank, the sheer interest will allow him to buy 20 apartments every month in Gangnam. However, hearing his son's nonchalant response, the vice chairman becomes more furious. He lashes out at his son, announcing that isn't what's important. From his experience, Yeongcheol is someone who wouldn't even give away 10 won for free. Despite this, he gave Dojun a pasture. Not only that, but he also passed the name and pride of the group to Dojun, giving him access to all the money his grandfather possessed. This leaves Yeongjun in shock, but his father continues, asking if his grandfather has given Yeongjun even an acre of land. Scratch that. A bank account even? Of course the answer is no. And that's just how lowly that old man thinks of Yeongjun. Alas, even in this situation, here his idiotic son is inviting a worthless child. Pathetic bastard. He condemns Yeongjun. With this, the vice chairman, who is introduced as Jin Yeongcheol, decides to take matters into his own hands, expressing how important it is for him to visit his brother Yumi's house, aka Dojun's father. A few days later, at Dojun's house, he is introduced to Sehyeon, his dad's friend who he studied with back in London. Apparently, Sehyeon is a big shot as well, who represents power shares. In the future, he is destined to build a super asset management company that manages over 800 trillion won per year. God damn, you'd think he would loan me 20, seeing him. Dojun is shocked at his father's connections. Regardless, Sehyeon wants to talk with Dojun one-on-one, and soon, they both sit face to face. There, Sehyeon asks if Dojun wants to be a businessman, and the boy reaffirms his dream, claiming he wants to be the businessman greater than his grandfather. Hearing this, Sehyeon can do nothing but compliment the boy's greed. Consequently, Dojun then asks if Sehyeon is also the boss of a company, and he confirms this, explaining he is someone who helps the rich get even richer. Hearing this, Dojun asks if he can become one of Sehyeon's clients as well, but he refuses, chuckling. As per him, all of his clients are very wealthy, and hence, this child cannot become one of them. Alas, it appears this guy hasn't heard about the boy's fortunes. Out of nowhere, Dojun reveals his net worth and back balance, leaving a cold sweat running down Sehyeon's face. On the other hand, everything is going according to Dojun's plan. Of course, there are many young underage chaebols thanks to the gifts of stock. However, none have reached his level. According to him, if he saves his money, it will become 100 billion in a matter of 30 years. And it's unlikely that a mere 12-year-old would have ownership of such funds. This brings an awkward silence in the room, so much so that the clock's ticks resonate throughout. Nonetheless, once Sehyeon gets a hold of himself, Dojun then proceeds with the conversation, showing him an investment plan he has conjured up. This surprises Sehyeon even more, and he begins going through it. But upon finding it to be extremely detailed and well planned, he is left sitting on the edge of his seat. Meanwhile, Dojun patiently waits for Sehyeon to finish, wondering how the CEO of Power Shares will react to his plan. And so, Sehyeon is eventually done with his overview, but is left flabbergasted at the boy's intellect. He questions how a child of Dojun's age knows all this, but he merely replies that he is pretty smart, for his age at least. No need to say that's an understatement. In Hee-yeon's eyes, no one would believe his investment plan was conjured by a 12-year-old. Apparently, Dojun's plan is to set up an investment company in the US and then invest in Korea, a plan that even university students wouldn't think of, but that's only expected. The university students aren't the grandson of Yoon Hyunwoo, nor do they possess dreams as big as his. With this, Dojun then explains that he has been visiting his grandfather every week for the past couple of years, and during his stay, he tries to understand where the old man is talking about. This, to Hee-yeon, means Dojun is being influenced by Yoon Hyunwoo. Of course, that's what Dojun wants him to believe. No matter how much of a genius you are, this plan isn't something a 12-year-old could think of. As such, in times like these, it's best to place the responsibility on his grandfather's shoulders. Soon, their little meeting comes to an end and Hee-yeon decides to take his leave. As he exits the house, Yomi, seeing the serious expression on his friend's face, asks him what's wrong. Consequently, Hee-yeon asks why he was not informed about Dojun's wealth, learning Yomi didn't want his old friend to have any preconceived notions. Nevertheless, Hee-yeon vivaciously tells Yomi that his son is not a normal kid. He is a genius. Hearing this, Yeonji at first takes this news lightly, recalling how Dojun had always been good at studying. But Hee-yeon isn't talking about such trivial things. Regardless, he wants to go back home and do some serious thinking. These words leave Yomi with a disquieting feeling in his chest. As he turns back to see Dojun peeking outside with a huge smile on his face, he wonders just what Hee-yeon really meant. After their first meeting, Hee-yeon takes an interest in the young Dojun and decides to keep advising him. One day, as they discuss some matters, Dojun claims he can gather information that his grandfather has, stating this is the best time to put his plan into action. Hearing this, Soonyang believes this is a better idea. Rather than following a random child's investment plan, it's more worthwhile to enact the plan of Soonyang Group's chairman. However, this is all a lie. According to Dojun, if he wants Hee-yeon to follow his plan, he has no other option than to use his grandfather as an excuse. Anyway, Hee-yeon reveals that by the end of the year, they will be able to set up an investment company in the United States. The equity of this company and its funds will belong to Dojun alone. Moreover, until he wants them, Hee-yeon can keep the funds in America. Nevertheless, Hee-yeon is going to be the CEO and promises to cover the operating expenses out of his own pocket. With this, Dojun then wants to make another request. After Hee-yeon shows intrigue, he begins to speak. Moments later, Hee-yeon walks out of the boys' room with a defeated look on his face. Seeing the distress on his friend's face, Yoongi worriedly asks if there are any problems or something. But rather than distress, Hee-yeon is more nervous. Out of nowhere, with a black expression on his face, he compliments Yoongi for raising such a genius. As it turns out, Dojun's new idea will have him rolling in money. But despite this, he only wants to allocate 10 billion to this endeavor. With the remaining 4 billion, he wants to start a movie production company. And the #1 candidate for the CEO of the company is none other than Yoongi himself. It's explained that an average movie costs about 150 million won, meaning with 4 billion you can make at least 10 movies. Hearing all of this, Yoongi is left in utter shock, whereas Hee-yeon continues. According to him, Dojun knows that just giving his father money is going to be rejected, so he has decided to set up this movie production company instead. Later on, he will just beg Yoongi to take over. This announcement leaves the room deadly silent. Meanwhile, Yoon Hyunwoo learns of this from Hee-yeon. As per Hak-jae, Hee-yeon is a friend of Yoongi, and they both studied in England together. More importantly, he comments on how impressive Dojun really is. He just thought Dojun would put his fortune into the bank and earn interest, but he shows incredible potential for leveraging it into an investment company. Of course, Yoon Hyunwoo isn't too excited about all this. He orders Hak-jae to visit Hee-yeon. After all, he could be just some fly that approached him for his money, and Hak-jae heeds his command, immediately leaving to follow through. All the while, Yoon Hyunwoo just keeps getting more and more interested in Dojun, remarking at how the way the bank's interest doesn't satisfy him is exactly like me. Someone likes to toot his own horn. Though I guess that's acceptable when you are literally the richest man in Korea. Just like that, the days go by in a flash. In August of 1989, 2 million protesters in the Soviet-controlled republics of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia demanded democracy. Because of this, a 600 km human chain connecting the capitals of each country was created, known as the Baltic Way. In addition, the Hungarian government also opened its western borders, and a large-scale exodus of East Germans escaped. This was a signal for the fall of the Eastern Bloc. During this time, when the whole world was paying attention to Eastern Europe's rapid changes, Dojun had become the owner of a large company, owning 92% of it. And finally, in November of 1989, he and Si Hee-yeon go to New York to visit their new organization. They are standing in front of his first business. Dojun is left stunned, but apparently, even this is considered a shabby building. As per Si Hee-yeon, he wanted to cut down on costs, so he bought this one for cheap. But in Dojun's eyes, this is nothing more than a gamble. I mean, for Manhattan, the financial capital of the world, this would be considered cheap. Regardless, Dojun explains that he decided to name this company Fantasy, and although Si Hee-yeon thought this was rather childish, it's the perfect name, since this company is going to bring about a real-life miracle. Anyways, as they take their steps inside, Dojun becomes more and more excited to start his empire. Here, I will raise a giant monster that will swallow up the Soonyang Group whole, he thinks. Just then, the employees come walking in, greeting Si Hee-yeon in English. As they begin to chat, Si Hee-yeon reveals that the CEO of their company is this child. In response, Dojun greets them as well, speaking fluent English that leaves everyone astonished. Obviously, Si Hee-yeon is amazed by this, but Dojun claims to have spent some time studying it on his own. Of course, his level is that of a native speaker, but I guess that's only to be expected. To even apply for a role in Soonyang, a second language is compulsory. Moreover, in the past, he had to specialize in foreign languages, and hence, he studied them without a break. Nevertheless, Dojun already wants to put his plan into action. He asks his team to research a company for him. Hearing this, Si Hee-yeon inquires as to what company it is, and Dojun tells them to investigate Martin Bell. These words leave everyone in disbelief, but Dojun explains that this is the first company they will invest in. As it turns out, Bell Martin cracked the bubble of postage stamp collection auctions at the young age of 12 by creating a way to contact sellers and buyers directly. Thanks to his new strategy, a large number of businesses started to merge, and he found massive success in simplifying the distribution process and utilizing focused marketing. Because of this method, he managed to build Martin Computers, which quickly became recognized as a world-class computer company. In the office, Si Hee-yeon questions if Dojun knows about Martin Computers, but he is more aware of Bell Martin than one would imagine, recalling the feats he has managed to achieve. However, Si Hee-yeon doesn't seem to be pleased with this idea. To him, it looks like Dojun is making a blind bet by investing in Martin merely based on his childhood story, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, Bell Martin is someone who was able to accumulate money at a young age, despite not having a rich grandfather. Wouldn't a person like that surely bring us a large sum of money? He argues. Si Hee-yeon is left perplexed yet again, after witnessing this child's intellect, and orders the others to quickly bring all the information they have on Bell Martin and Martin Computers. And so they all hurry off to investigate while Dojun stands around waiting, thinking up his next plan. A few days later, Dojun and Si Hee-yeon venture out to meet with a Martin Computers representative to talk business at a fast food place. Is that a Wendy's ripoff? The author is trying his best not to get sued. However, Dojun finds the meeting spot quite surprising. There, Si Hee-yeon reveals that their investment success rate will be low because Martin has, apparently, already received a $30 million investment. If it was last year, Bell would have been much more eager to meet them. After all, this is all about capturing the right time, the time to enter and the time to exit. Alas, this time, they are late, and the meeting spot is proof. This just goes to show they are people worthy of meeting at such a casual place, despite the meeting being difficult to arrange in the first place. Regardless, they decide to go inside, and they are greeted by Bell Martin himself, sitting in the corner. According to Dojun, Bell became part of the top 400 richest men in the world at 27, quickly claiming the position as the 5th richest upon reaching 32. Anyway, after a brief greeting, they get down to business, since Bell has to return to work in 15 minutes. Consequently, Si Hee-yeon explains that Fantasy Investments wants to invest in his company, but before he can finish stating the value, Bell cuts him off. "We don't need an investment. We have plenty as it is right now," Bell proclaims. Of course, this is only to be expected. After getting $30 million, Martin Computers has secured enough funds, though it's not like they didn't think of this. Si Hee-yeon tries to push the issue further, but Bell immediately shuts him down again, explaining he already has a perfect plan to exceed the expected profit margins, refusing to do anything stupid like increasing the stock to make more money. Suddenly, realizing that Yeon isn't even getting a word in, Dojun decides to jump into the conversation as well, commenting on how his aim is to become like Belle in the future. Hearing this, Belle slyly remarks that Dojun has big dreams for a kid, but the fact is, Dojun is not a normal person. He is different even from Belle. Although Belle might have earned $2,000 at 12 by selling stamps, Dojun has managed to earn a hopping $15 million from selling land. Hearing this, Belle is unable to believe his ears, but Dojun continues, revealing he already knows what to do with his wealth. I plan to use it to become a major shareholder of Martin Computers, he announces. Taken aback by this bold claim, Belle turns back to Yeon, asking if this kid is his son. They'll be shocked to learn Dojun is actually the boss. This makes Belle burst out laughing, and he decides to get a bit serious, claiming he wants to ask 2 questions. Firstly, he wants to know how Dojun found out about his past. But since Dojun didn't know this wasn't public knowledge yet, he acts cocky, explaining there's no way he would make a $15 million investment without some background research. With this, Belle then questions how Dojun plans on becoming a major shareholder if he refuses to accept their investment. As of now, in the composition of the board of directors, he still has more than half of the voting rights, meaning his decisions are absolute. But our boy Genius even has a rebuttal for that, prophesying that his company will undergo huge development around the next year. These words leave Belle flustered, since this was not something anyone else would know. But little does he know, our boy is literally from the future. Dojun continues, explaining he will buy all the publicly available stock with his money and with $15 million lying around. That is going to be a cakewalk. This will make him one of the major shareholders, and as a member of the board of directors, he will become deeply rooted in the management. However, if Belle agrees to his investment, he vows to give all of his voting rights as a shareholder to him, just until he sells the stock again. In addition, he also promises to give Belle the option to buy back the stock at the exact market price of that time. Also, Yeon isn't too thrilled about all of this and intervenes. He tells Dojun that this is not something he can just decide on his own, commenting on how acquisition rights are usually higher than the market rate. Furthermore, voting rights also warrant a higher transaction price. Seeing the way Yeon talks to Dojun, Belle finally understands that Dojun really is the boss. Until now, he doubted it was the case, but he can no longer put a curtain over his eyes. With this, he then asks what Dojun's name is, and he introduces himself as Howard Jean, leading to Belle suggesting they talk in more detail. Hearing these words, Dojun's face lightens up, whereas Yeon is sitting there in disbelief. And from the looks of it, the meeting ends up fruitful for our young genius. Later that night, on the plane ride back home, Yeon explains that he will be busy with the negotiations for the investment going forward. The terms will be the same as they agreed to today. However, there is a high likelihood that Martin Computers will turn down the $15 million. In that case, he asks what he should do with the remaining funds, and Dojun tells him to discuss it with the staff and decide where to invest. After their selection round, he will personally review and make the final decision. Just then, out of nowhere, Yeon compliments Dojun. The conversation he had with Belle was incredible, no matter how you look at it. Even though he recognizes Dojun as a smart kid, it's something Yeon just can't wrap his head around. These words send Dojun into deep thought, and after a moment of silence, he decides to come clean once and for all. In truth, I am someone from 30 years in the future, but just reborn now, he exclaims. Sounds like someone just had a stroke. Better dock the translator's pay. Because of this, Dojun has the knowledge of a 40-year-old in his head. This surprises Yeon at first, but there's no way he's falling for these childish stories. He angrily tells Dojun to stop joking around, especially since he's not into science fiction novels, and Dojun just laughs it off. Nevertheless, in Yeon's eyes, this fairy tale would actually make sense in this scenario. There is no question that Dojun does possess the intellect of someone 40 years older after all. All the while, Dojun patiently waits, and the duo soon arrives back in Korea. On the other hand, back at the Soonyang Group headquarters, Hak-jae explains that, according to his information, Dojun's recent visit to Manhattan was solely for sightseeing and shopping purposes. Of course, this is far from the truth, and Yang Cheol knows it. The fact that Yeon accompanied Dojun on this trip is enough evidence to deem this a business trip. Hearing this, Hak-jae claims he will look more into it. Moreover, he has an even bigger announcement to make, and after hesitating for a bit, he reveals that Yoonji is currently in the middle of establishing his own film production company. In addition, it's in its final stages, and production is set to begin sometime next year. According to Hackjae, they are planning on making 2 episodes simultaneously to increase their output. Hearing all this, Yoon Hyunwoo is enraged even more so after learning Doojun allotted 4 billion won for this project. However, he soon calms down. Apparently, this too is a necessary learning experience that Doojun has to acquire. From his perspective, no one should spend money on such shallow recognition, and even if it is his biological father, one should never invest in something with no possibility of profit. What about all that family comes first stuff then? Nevertheless, if all it takes is 4 billion to learn this lesson, it's a cheap price to pay. Despite this, Hackjae is skeptical. To him, it's possible that Yoonji might actually succeed with his production company, but Yoon Hyunwoo doubts this. As per him, Yoonji has been an unemployed man all his life, and it's not like anyone can just start a business with no experience. If filmmaking was so easy, why would movies fail? He asked his assistant. Of course, Hackjae has no response and just lowers his head, thinking about what might happen if even one movie ends up succeeding. Meanwhile, back at Doojun's house, we learn he and Si Hee-yeon have returned from their trip. It's revealed that $9 million was the amount set for the investment in Martin Computers, and hence, they now have to decide where to invest their remaining $6 million. As a result, Doojun goes through all of their options, and that's when he comes across something exciting. Microsoft, he whispers. Si Hee-yeon, who was sitting right beside him, expresses how this could be a refreshing idea. Actually, he's not too involved with the computer industry, and there are rumors that it is a bit dangerous to invest in them. But to Doojun, that makes no sense. After all, in the future, Microsoft is destined to become a huge organization, and he questions his aide as to why it's dangerous. Consequently, Si Hee-yeon explains that the company keeps on releasing a new computer operating system every year, but despite their efforts, the market reaction is not very favorable. Even Bill Gates has it tough. Huh? According to some insider information, a 3rd version is planned to be released next year, but it's difficult to guess what will happen if that fails as well, and the public reaction remains lukewarm. Furthermore, there is also news that IBM is currently in the process of developing its own operating system, which is aimed at cutting off Microsoft. With all this new information, Doojun begins recalling the future, and after a short thinking session, he decides to jump in. Even though he doesn't remember which product turned the direction of the company around. It's only a difference of a year or 2 anyway. Waiting a few years for a literal fortune is a bargain after all. With this, he then asks what Si Hee-yeon thinks about this ordeal, and much to his surprise, Si Hee-yeon too seems to be drawn to Microsoft as well for some reason. Hearing this, Doojun ultimately decides to give this company a try, telling Si Hee-yeon not to worry so much, since he carries luck with him in all endeavors. In addition, he orders Si Hee-yeon to sell his remaining land in Bundang. However, hearing this, Si Hee-yeon is stunned, since he thinks it's better for them to hold on to it and sell when the prices reach their peak. Alas, there's a lack in his judgment. As Doojun points out, a company like theirs cannot just sit around and play. After they have put all of their 15 million in the 2 companies, fantasy investments will need extra money to keep running and investing. The cost of operations, as they say. As such, if they sell Doojun's land, they can use half of it for their investment firm and hold on to the remaining amount. Eventually, after they are done with their decision, Si Hee-yeon takes his leave, promising to take care of everything they have discussed today. And so, just as Si Hee-yeon takes his leave, Doojun drops his childish demeanor. As it turns out, he can only use fragments of his future knowledge, but everything he knows is not set in stone. In his previous life, he was not a stockbroker or anything extravagant. He was merely an office worker who had never even seen Wall Street. All he is now are these scrap articles to gather information, and hence, all he can recall are some companies that could be smart investments. But, as per him, there is a more definite investment destination that will create unimaginable profits in the next 30 years. Movies, or more precisely, Hollywood. One thing he knows for sure is most Hollywood movies make a huge profit, and in an industry like that, becoming a film investor that never fails would alone make him the hands of Midas in Hollywood. As a result, a few days later, Si Hee-yeon comes back to his house, bringing a document Doojun personally requested. And what might this document be, you might ask? Well, it's all the information a 12-year-old could want on Hollywood, its production companies, investment, and distribution. That's a pretty messed up 12-year-old if you ask me. At that age, all I wanted from Hollywood was Megan Fox and Transformers. With this, Do-joon begins looking through this booklet while Si-hyeon asks what's going on. To him, it could be possible that Do-joon wants to show something to his father. Regardless, Do-joon soon finds a title he recognizes, though he's immediately disappointed after seeing that Ghost Romance's distribution has already been confirmed. In his mind, he's enraged at this news. If only his father's company had been in charge of domestic distribution for this movie, he could have forced the theater owners to move on to his dad's film. Nevertheless, he finds another title he likes and asks Si-hyeon if this movie is under production. As a result, after searching for a while, Si-hyeon reveals that it's currently on hold. The movie is a small family film, and the director is a newcomer. Moreover, as it just so happens, the main character is a kid, just like Do-joon. But even with all this, Si-hyeon advises against investing in this movie. Apparently, he worked on a movie in the past, but the production cost went up dramatically. Because of this, he had to unload the work onto another company, and the movie is still under review. To him, if their next possible investment is already having problems from the initial stages, there is no guarantee that it will result in success. I mean, valid point, I guess. Nevertheless, Do-joon remains adamant, insisting he wants to invest in this movie as fast as possible with as much money as possible. However, Si-hyeon isn't backing down either. With a scornful expression on his face, he explains that investing in movies and stocks is completely different. From what he knows, there is no time to pull out a movie investment, and hence, he rejects Do-joon's decision. This isn't an investment, it's gambling, he states. Despite Si-hyeon's advice, Do-joon is still pushing forward, vowing he will never say anything else about Si-hyeon's investments, pleading with him to allow him to go ahead with this idea. But Si-hyeon just shuts him down completely. There inside Do-joon's mind, he expresses how this was to be expected. Still, this is not an opportunity he can lose so easily. This is because he cannot forfeit the golden chance to imprint the name of Fantasy Investments on Hollywood as an investment company. On top of that, a buttload of profits will follow suit. And so, Do-joon doubles down. He announces that, even if it fails, it's his money in the first place. In addition, even if Fantasy Investments goes bankrupt, it still doesn't matter, since his grandfather is the richest man in Korea. Hearing these words, Si-hyeon is even more pissed off, but ultimately agrees to Do-joon's request. With this, he vows to take care of their deal, even promising to take the distribution rights in Korea. With this, Si-hyeon takes his leave and angrily walks out. Even Do-joon's mother tries to cool him down, suggesting he join them for dinner, but he refuses and storms out. Seeing this, Do-joon's mother is a bit worried, but Do-joon tells her to fret not. In his mind, he knows Si-hyeon's bitter emotions will all melt like snow once he looks at the box office. Finally, he begins smirking while looking at his next scheme, which is revealed to be the famous movie Home Alone, though a rip-off version, so the author doesn't get sued. Just like that, time flies by in an instant. Soon, Microsoft releases its latest version, Windows 3.0, and it quickly takes over the PC market, rapidly increasing its stock prices. Additionally, Martin Computers also rises to power, breaking records and leading to its stock values soaring at an all-time high. Thanks to all this, Si-hyeon, who was initially very angry at Do-joon's plan, quickly reverts back to his usual happy-go-lucky self. The $8 million Do-joon invested in Home Alone had the potential to cover up the loss of 56 billion won in just a few years, but it didn't take Si-hyeon that long to change his mind about the plan. Right after the box office premiere in America, the revenue generated was $33 billion, giving them 6 times the profits in return. And even this is still only in America. Once it's released all over the world, it will make even more money, and could result in Do-joon becoming the richest elementary schooler in the entire world. However, time hasn't been sitting idly for our boy, and now he has become a middle schooler, much to Si-hyeon's surprise. Rose surprised that Do-joon grew up. Just then, Yoon-ji comes rushing into the room, frantically questioning what is so important that he has to come here. Seeing his friend in a rush, Si-hyeon asks what's up, questioning if this is all because of the latest movie he is working on. Apparently, there are rumors that it has been troublesome to find an opening hall for Yoon-ji's film, and Yoon-ji confirms this. As per him, all the theaters are closed for New Year's, and those that are open have decided to show the mega hit Home Alone that was launched earlier in the year. Hearing this, a huge smile covers Si Hee-yeon's face, and he asks if the movie is really so famous that it has vacated all the other theaters, and this is precisely the case. Yoon-ji comments on how Home Alone is a family comedy movie, perfect for New Year's Eve. They are breaking new records in comedy box office history, he exclaims. But this is also the reason why Yoon-ji's movie is having such a hard time getting any attention. As such, in order for his movie to succeed, Home Alone has to be taken down first. Of course, it's easier said than done. Even though there are rumors about a Korean distributor, no one knows who that guy is, and the whole world of films is in chaos. Consequently, he wants to meet with the owner of the film and have him adjust the date or something. So if his movie can prosper as well, just use your father's name. Surely the Soonyang Group has a few connections here and there. And so, Si Hee-yeon chimes in, telling his friend to give him a super respectful bow first. Apparently, Si Hee-yeon knows who this mysterious distributor is, and Do-jun chimes in as well, promising that he will show his father's movie first. Obviously, Yoon-ji has no idea what on earth is going on, but Si Hee-yeon tells his friend to listen to Do-jun's every word as if it were the gospel, suggesting that if he does so, there is no way he would fail. With this, he then hands Yoon-ji a document, explaining that if he just signs this piece of paper, the mega hit Home Alone will belong to Yoon-ji and his production company. Seeing this, Yoon-ji is left bewildered, as expected, whereas Do-jun explains how he thought that this would be the best gift for his father. He promises to give Home Alone to any theater that allows his father's movie to be shown first, and soon, Yoon-ji comes back to his senses. Well, sort of. Immediately, he rushes out of the room, wanting to finish this all up first and deal with the details later. Seeing his reaction, Si Hee-yeon begins chuckling, thinking about how much of a rush Yoon-ji must be in, to not even question how Home Alone got into his son's hands. Given up for the father of the year, everybody. Of course, Do-jun is not too concerned about these trivial matters as well, and tells Si Hee-yeon to draw up a list of movies to be produced this year. He wants to invest the $200 million they have earned this time into movies yet again. However, Si Hee-yeon isn't too keen about this plan. At first, he tries to suggest that Do-jun should stay satisfied with this one big bite and refrain from any more dangerous investments, but Do-jun doesn't stand for it. Instead, he asks what the return on investment is for his employees at Fantasy Investments. To this, Si Hee-yeon claims it's 22%. What, as per Do-jun, his investments give a return of comes out to about 600%, and even that is the lowest return he has ever made on any deal. With this, he passes a smile to Si Hee-yeon, and he ultimately concedes, promising to contact Do-jun once he has obtained the list and takes his leave. After Si Hee-yeon exits the room, Do-jun finally takes a sigh of relief. Laying on his bed, he decides to start focusing on his studies until middle school ends. Apparently, this will allow Yoon Cheol's expectations to remain constant, and for the next 3 years, he wants to be as free as possible, so he can choose movies that have been successful in his previous life to make a fortune. Just then, he hears a knock on his door, and his mom comes walking in. There, after confirming that Do-jun's meeting has ended, she suggests they have a little outing meal, and Do-jun instantly agrees. Can't pass up some family time with mom after all. A few days later, Yoon-ji hurriedly leaves his house. Seeing this, Do-jun asks where his father is going, learning that today is the day for his movie's premiere. As a result, he is heading to the theater to scope out the situation. On the other hand, Do-jun begins reading the newspaper and becomes worried. According to him, all the articles are currently attacking Ajin Motors. But as far as Do-jun knows, this was an event that happened in the future. This time travel stuff really is complicated. In the past, it wasn't until 1997 that the financial crisis hit Ajin Motors. Moreover, Ajin was then swallowed up by Dae-hyun in 1998. This news scares him, especially since this means his special secret is becoming obsolete. Could the future have changed because of me, he wonders. Of course, there could be many other explanations as well, but he can't be sure of anything anymore. As such, he asks his mother when she plans on visiting Yoon Cheol next and learns that she will head out tomorrow. Consequently, he asks if he can head on ahead first, and his mother allows him to do so once he is done with breakfast. With this, he then asks if she is going to the theater, but she refuses, explaining she is too nervous. However, there is nothing Do-jun can do on that front. The fact is, he too has no idea about his father's movie. It's possible that it didn't exist in the future after all. All he has done is give his father a choice, and it's up to Yoon-ji now. whether or not his project ends up a success. He vows to not get involved with the film, commenting on how it's part of his enjoyment to just watch his father work from afar. Anyway, soon, he reaches Yoon Hyunwoo's mansion, where he's informed his grandfather is currently in a meeting with some guests. Consequently, Doo-jun decides to wait until the meeting is over. In the meantime, he thinks about how the articles bashing Jin just came out before the holidays and already a meeting is taking place. I wonder what kind of talk will take place in that study. He remarks with a stern look on his face. What happened to keeping your head down and studying for the next 3 years? Meanwhile, inside Yoon Hyunwoo's study, he's seen talking about Jin Motors with Hakjae and the vice chairman, Jin Yeongcheol, aka Yoon Hyunwoo's eldest son. Yoon Hyunwoo questions if the vice chairman really believes he can completely take over Jin Motors, and with slight hesitation, he confirms this. As per him, this is the best way for Soonyang to get second place in the industry, and from there, they can aim for the #1 spot by taking down Dae-yoon. Consequently, Yoon Hyunwoo decides to put him in charge of this task. After discussing the terms with Hakjae, he wants the vice chairman to take over Jin within the year. In addition, he also claims that if you succeed, I will give you possession of that department. Hearing these words, the vice chairman breathes a sigh of relief and begins to smile with joy. All the while, Hakjae begins to understand the real gravity of this statement. From his perspective, if Youngji is able to take over Jin Motors and put it into his pocket, that will be equivalent to him having ownership of the entire company in the future. He begins to wonder if Yoon Hyunwoo has already made up his mind about the next successor to his great empire, and this is his way of passing it over. Regardless, Yoon Hyunwoo asks if his son is up to the task, and the vice chairman enthusiastically answers, thanking his father for this opportunity. With this, Yoon Hyunwoo tells his son to leave, ordering him to give his complete and undivided attention to this new task. The fact is that acquiring and running Jin Motors will not be an easy task, and it's important to be on top of everything to not waste any time. And so, the vice chairman bids his farewells and leaves. With his departure, Hakjae comments on how Yoon Hyunwoo's announcement is quite grand for some New Year's pocket money. To him, it is no less than announcing their acquisition of the company, but Yoon Hyunwoo had no such intention from the start. He simply said Youngji could have the automobile department. Apparently, if they get hold of half of the motor stocks owned by the company affiliates, there will be no problem in defending their management rights. Realizing this silly idea, Hakjae is impressed, remarking at how Youngji is in for a rude awakening. But that too is a trial he must face with some fire in his eyes. Youngji is gonna be so pissed. Can't wait till he finds out. Eventually, Doo-jun is allowed to meet his grandfather as well, and he enters the study, making small talk with Yoon Hyunwoo. There, as he enters, he finds articles about Jin Motors' demise on Yoon Hyunwoo's desk. This makes him sure that today's meeting was in fact about Jin Motors, and he tries to infer what was discussed. He talks about how Youngji looked happy while leaving the study, but Yoon Hyunwoo doesn't give out any information, simply chalking it up to the holiday spirit. And that is when something peculiar catches Doo-jun's eye. As it turns out, Yoon Hyunwoo was in the middle of reading plans for industry restructuring, and finally, he connected all the dots. The cause of all this was grandfather, he wonders, as he stands there, stunned and deeply silent. Yoon Hyunwoo notices his grandson's discomfort and asks what's up. Of course, Doo-jun changes the topic and remarks on how the papers this morning were in chaos. Recalling Yoon Hyunwoo's words, he claims that if there was news about Soonyang in the papers, it was necessary to find out who did it and find them as soon as possible. Hearing this, Yoon Hyunwoo is impressed. He reveals that reporters are people who earn money through their words. In other words, their articles. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Although it might look like there is no money to be made on such things, they end up really profitable. For example, articles on traffic jams are simply a justification for road expansion projects. However, if this is the case, then what and who was the article on Jin Motors meant for? Doo-jun wonders. And so, Yoon Hyunwoo reveals it must be for the rivals that will benefit from Jin's demise. To this, Doo-jun has two answers. Firstly, Dae-yoon Motors and then Jin Yeongcheol himself. Hearing this, Yoon Hyunwoo pats Doo-jun on the head, making him realize his grandfather is the one behind everything. Even before he tried to pounce on this opportunity, Yoon Hyunwoo had already targeted Jin Motors. Nevertheless, there is something strange in all of this. As far as he knows, Yang Cheol wasn't the one who acquired Ajin Motors in the future. But this leaves only one possibility left. Yang Cheol must have failed in his takeover, and hence Dae-Yoon took charge instead. Somehow. I doubt that Korea's richest man failed in taking over a company, but whatever. The next day, a family dinner is held at Yang Cheol's mansion. The chefs go all out, preparing a delicious feast for all the family members. At the dinner table, everyone is seen enjoying the food when suddenly, the eldest son of the Soonyang Group asks Young-ji about his movie premiere. In response, Young-ji reveals that it went over well. One theater was filled completely, whereas one was filled about halfway. Of course, for a first project, it's a major success, but still, this is only the first day, and they can't be sure of the success until the advertisement boards are fully taken down. Just then, the eldest son's wife chimes in as well, telling Do-jun's mother to go fetch her some more stew. Obviously, she gets up to do so timidly, but Do-jun isn't pleased with such behavior. He remarks on how that woman always asks his mother to run petty errands for her, like it's natural. Even Young-ji is seen losing his mind. However, out of nowhere, Yang Cheol intervenes. He tells the woman to get him some stew as well. Hearing this, the room goes completely silent, and at the drop of a hat, Yang Cheol begins shouting at the woman, telling her to get on it quickly, leaving the other women of the family in complete distress. Even Yoon-ji is taken aback by this sudden outburst, whereas Do-jun deems this to be his grandfather's way of finally acknowledging his mother and father in front of the whole family. A strange way of acknowledgement, but okay, I guess. For him, this is the best scenario. Now, no one can mess with his parents like before, something that almost brings a tear to his eyes. Alas, he can't get all sentimental right now. After all, he has some devious plans in mind. I will have to betray my grandfather eventually, he exclaims. After dinner, Do-jun sneaks back into Yang Cheol's study. According to him, he wants to take a look at the report he found on Yang Cheol's desk yesterday. In order to stop his plan, Do-jun needs to find out the details. Soon, he manages to find the report and immediately gets to researching. However, what he finds blows his mind. From what he can gather, these reports are not plans for swallowing of Ajin Motors, rather, it is the government policy on the consolidation and abolition of the automobile industry. Cue the dramatic music. Apparently, if Dae-Yoon absorbs Ajin Motors, there will be a major concern about monopoly in the automobile industry. Because of this, there are methods that would make Soonyang Motors most suitable to become Ajin's acquirer. And that is what these reports are trying to achieve. Yang Cheol, in reality, makes up policies that favor Soonyang and presents them to the government. Thanks to his relations, the government then takes the policy into action. In short, the report he has in front of him is the secret evidence of the relationship between Soonyang and the government. Seeing all this, Do-jun begins freaking out. All this means he cannot use this report for his benefit. Moreover, he cannot simply leave things like this as well, or else his ambition to take over Ajin Motors will end up in vain. But as he panics about what to do next, he makes a huge mistake. Without any notice, Yang Cheol enters the study, questioning, "What are you doing here?" Hearing his grandfather's voice, Do-jun is left in complete disarray. Terrified to his core, he slowly raises his head to see Yang Cheol staring at him, eyes filled with rage. He's done messed up now. Immediately, Do-jun begins blaming himself for this mistake, condemning himself for being so lost in thought that he didn't notice Yang Cheol coming in. Regardless, he is now stuck between a rock and a hard place, and if he misspeaks, Do-jun's entire world will come crashing down. All the trust he has managed to accumulate until now could be lost in the blink of an eye. As a result, in a situation like this, he decides that the best course of action will be to tell the truth, especially in front of someone like Yang Cheol. Stuttering his words, Do-jun claims he was just curious. After reading the recent articles about Ajin Motors, he came here yesterday to talk with his grandfather, and that's when he saw this report on his desk. Upon laying eyes on the report, he became curious about what differences there might be between the articles he read in the newspaper and the report Yang Cheol possesses. And the next thing you know, Do-jun was here, reading the report in secret. He apologizes for his actions, and then silently waits to see how the old man will react. In his mind, if they are talking about someone like Yang Cheol, he is bound to like this sort of response, the greed to find out more about something in a short amount of time. And, just as he expected, Yang Cheol calms down. Giving Do-jun a smile, he asks if his curiosity has been resolved. Seeing this, Do-jun breathes a sigh of relief, glad that his quick thinking paid off. Yeah, that could have ended badly. In response, he claims he just started reading, so he isn't sure if he is satisfied. With this, Yoon Hyunwoo comments on how it's good to have an attitude like Do-jun's, though he warns him never to come inside here alone ever again, and Do-jun agrees, apologizing yet again. Nevertheless, he has managed to avoid the worst-case scenario for now, though his future worries are yet to be taken care of. He thought that this report would contain plans to take over Ajin Motors, but it turned out to be completely irrelevant. As such, in this situation, he needs to find something new in order to turn the tide in his favor. As Do-jun takes his leave, he wonders what he should do now. All of a sudden, he gets an ingenious idea. The fact is, he doesn't really need to stop his grandfather. Instead, he can just cause obstacles for the government. I need to make it so that the government can't spare time to even care about auto reports that Soonyang Group has made, he exclaims. Therefore, he goes deep into thought, trying to recall anything and everything that happened around this time in the future. A few days later, Hak-jae is seen discussing something with Yoon Hyunwoo. As per him, after a bit of investigation, it turns out that the Hyunwoo Group's chairman, Jung Hee-soo, has bought a piece of land, and in order to do so, he had to give some politicians some backdoor money. In layman's terms, a bribe. Because of this, Hak-jae expresses that it's probably for the best not to contact the Blue House for the time being, commenting on how the fire spread by this news will not be extinguished so easily. In addition, he suggests they put a hold on buying Ajin Motor shares for now, and after a while of thinking, Yoon Hyunwoo decides to do just that. After cursing out Jung Hee-soo, he tells Hak-jae to clean his hands of the Ajin shares and leave. Moreover, Yoon Hyunwoo then throws the automobile reports into the trash, signifying how they have turned into literal garbage for him. On the other hand, Do-jun is seen leisurely drinking some juice in his room. As it turns out, this is all his doing. He leaked this sensitive information to some media outlets, thinking this would force the country into turmoil. As a result, the government won't have any time to consider Soonyang's proposals, allowing him to enact his plan without any worries. Goddamn, that's devious, especially for a teenager. A few days go by, and Do-jun decides to visit Si-hee-yeon in his office. There, he asks him to stop working at Power Shares and go all in on fantasy investments. As things stand, Si-hee-yeon already owns 2% of the company, and after having made a buttload of money, they can afford higher salaries to pay Si-hee-yeon now. However, Si-hee-yeon is against this idea. From his perspective, fantasy investments is run by Do-jun, who owns 98% of the stocks, and makes dogmatic decisions that always result in success. If so, what use is Si-hee-yeon in such a company? Hearing this, Do-jun is taken aback, but desperately wants Si-hee-yeon on board. Calmly, he begins thinking of another bait and reveals he is planning on setting up a Korean branch as well and keeping some funds here to manage. Moreover, he remarks that Si-hee-yeon is already in charge of Yoon Hyunwoo's slush money. These words leave Si-hee-yeon surprised, since he thought this was kept under wraps, but Do-jun continues. He explains he will use the money he invested in Martin Computers to set up this branch, while his other funds, as well as Yoon Hyunwoo's slush funds, will stay under Si-hee-yeon's watchful eye to keep on growing. However, Si-hee-yeon is completely against this. Even though Do-jun has been planning on pulling the funding from Martin Computers since last year, Si-hee-yeon insists that it's a gold mine that produces vast amounts of profits every day. It hasn't even failed once since the listing. So why does Do-jun want to pull out of such a deal? Are you really going to sell diamond-level stocks? He questions. But Do-jun nonchalantly dismisses his question, asking what he thought about his proposal. Chuckling, he remarks how this is a final deal, but rather much more like an exchange. This annoys Si-hee-yeon, who turns back to hide his anger. Nevertheless, he soon changes his mind. He decides to talk more about this topic later, once he has sorted out everything he will need, and Do-jun agrees. In his mind, he has no qualms about what Si-hee-yeon will request from him to join fantasy investments fully, especially since Do-jun plans to listen to all of it. What he needs right now is an adult like Si-hee-yeon, someone who no longer thinks of him as a child, but also has experience in the financial world. What Do-jun needs is a person with an unscathed career, and the only person in the entire world like that is Si-hee-yeon. Listening to this, Si-hee-yeon then asks what Do-jun is planning on doing with the funds from Martin Computers, and learns that the boy genius wants to invest it in Japan. Hearing this, Si-hee-yeon almost loses his mind. He expresses how, as per the newspapers, the bubble in Japan has burst and caused a great crisis. But Doo-jun already knows this. Rather, from his perspective, the best opportunities are always in the biggest crisis. Obviously, Hee-yeon isn't too sure about this, commenting on how that's only the story of a select few. Only 1 in a million can seize an opportunity in the middle of a crisis, but it seems like Hee-yeon has doubted Doo-jun's ability. "Uncle, do you not believe that I am part of that 1 in a million?" Doo-jun asks with a grin on his face. Seeing this, Hee-yeon is left flabbergasted and utterly speechless, though he tells Doo-jun to stop smiling since it's creepy. "Lay off of him, man. He's just a kid." On the other hand, at Soonyang headquarters, Young-ji is seen talking privately with his children. He starts by asking his eldest, Jin Yeongcheol, what Yeongcheol had to say. The son reveals that he was told to work in Europe until he turns 30. Naturally, hearing such an outrageous demand, Young-ji asks if his son lashed out at all at the old man, but that wasn't the case. Young-jun simply smiled, claimed he would work hard, and left. With this, Young-ji warns all his children, telling them to heed his words carefully. Now that they are all adults, their grandfather is sure to keep a keen eye on their every move. He wants all of them to avoid getting mixed up in any unpleasant rumors that might affect them or others in the family. He even tells his daughter, Hey Ki-young, to hurry up and graduate so she can marry into a decent family. Obviously, she has qualms about this idea, commenting on how no one gets married right after graduation anymore and how it's an outdated tradition. But Young-ji refuses to listen. Instead, he shouts at his daughter, announcing that the only good thing she's ever done is being related to Yeongcheol. Because of this, she's gotten everything she's ever wanted. And if their grandfather were to abandon them now, they would never be able to enjoy the same luxuries they can afford currently. How's that for a reality check? Seeing their father on edge, the younger son asks why their father is talking like this. Calmly, Young-ji explains that there has been a major shift in Yeongcheol's behavior. Nowadays, your grandfather's affections have been twisted toward the youngest son. Doo-jun's family, he exclaims. However, that doesn't mean very much, at least to Yeong-jun. He remarks that although Yeongcheol's affection is for Doo-jun right now, the fact remains that he treated Doo-jun's father like he didn't exist until recently. In reality, Yeongcheol was never the type of person to care about such things, and the others also agree. But as things stand right now, this situation could change. Young-ji expresses how Yeongcheol, even in his busiest times, has been watching Yoon-ji's newly released movie. The fact remains that Yeongcheol is on his last legs and doesn't have much more time to live. Bru, he's your dad, isn't he? Well, the entire family has some serious issues. As a result, he wants his children to not cause him any trouble and to visit him regularly. Once Soonyang Group falls into my hands, you guys can live however you want, he announces. Sounds like a good plan if you ask me. Ultimately, the children heed their father's command and leave the office. Meanwhile, Young-ji is seen fretting over the future, letting out a depressing sigh. He thinks about how he should have taken Ajin Motors into his own hands last year. Ever since then, the company's issues have progressed without his knowledge, and the last issue of affairs he was dealing with was approved by Yeongcheol. With this, within the group, rumors of succession structure changes began to spread. Slowly but surely, the presidents of the affiliated companies also skipped him, opting to report directly to Yeongcheol instead. From what he can see, it's obvious that his father has changed, and the reason for his change is clear as well. But one that I have never been cautious of. A nephew who was shaking up the entire household, he angrily states. At least to him, his children cannot become the heirs of Soonyang. It's simply better and faster to abandon these burdens. This guy has a screw loose for sure. On the flip side, Fantasy Investments soon establishes its Korean branch, and Hee-yeon is inaugurated as the CEO of both branches. Because of this, Doo-jun, a major shareholder, and Hee-yeon, the new manager, have developed a rather delicate relationship. Although, for the most part, Hee-yeon's attitude hasn't changed. He has now started dismissing Doo-jun's opinions and objections immediately. In the past, he used to listen more intently and always gave valid reasons for his opposition based on data. But things have changed, for better or for worse. One day, the two meet up to resume their conversation. There, Hee-yeon asks Doo-jun to reconsider his idea about selling all of Martin Computer's stocks, but Doo-jun remains adamant, expressing how he has already gotten 100 times the profit, and it isn't good to be any more greedy. As a result, Hee-yeon can't do anything and gives in. With this, he brings out a bunch of documents, revealing a company he has looked into for their next investment. Nevertheless, this time around, things won't be so easy. Apparently, the company's sales last year were 100 billion yen, making it a fully developed organization. But, as per Si Hee-yeon, this company is like the IT industry. If the IT industry drops, so will the group. To him, this means it will grow into something even bigger in the future, since the IT industry is just starting to pick up. Just then, Do-jun spots something from the corner of his eye and is left speechless. All of a sudden, he begins to smirk. As it turns out, he has already chosen and finalized which company he wanted to invest in, but following protocols, he asks his co-workers to bring in a list first. But who would have thought that both Do-jun and Si Hee-yeon would be interested in the same company? Regardless, he asks why Si Hee-yeon said it wouldn't be easy this time around. And he explains that companies that are already developed and on track usually think there is no need for further investments. Moreover, as it turns out, the founder of this company is Choi Jeongcheol, a third-generation Korean Japanese. But Do-jun is less interested in details and asks if the owner plans on going public with the company. Of course, even Si Hee-yeon has no idea about this, prompting Do-jun to think they might have a chance. He recalls how he read an article about power banks that decided upon company going public, though he doesn't remember the exact timing. As such, he quotes his grandfather, claiming, "Everything in this world has a price. However, the price is different for each person. From what he can see, if the conditions are right, Choi Jeongcheol will definitely sell." Hearing this, Si Hee-yeon begins to smile, asking how much Do-jun is prepared to give Choi. But Do-jun asks for Si Hee-yeon's thoughts on this instead. As a result, Si Hee-yeon suggests 5 times the price. If it's this much money, they will be able to leave about 30% of the profit for their next endeavor. However, Do-jun isn't too keen on this idea. If it's only 5 times as much, he doesn't think Choi will pay much attention. But that's exactly what Si Hee-yeon meant when he said it wouldn't be easy. The offer, in order to get any traction, has to be excessive, since there will be a lot of investors willing to pay the same amount. In other words, investing more than that could mean it's a worthless plan. Alas, for our boy Genius, this is an easy fix. All this means is they have to offer more than 5 times the price. Consequently, Si Hee-yeon asks how much Do-jun is planning to spend, and is left flabbergasted after the boy claims it's up to 50 times. "I wish I had bread like that." Obviously, Si Hee-yeon is utterly confused after such a bold announcement, but to Do-jun, it's nothing extreme. Martin Computers has already passed 100 times the profit, so wouldn't power banks be able to do the same? Obviously, though, Si Hee-yeon has some qualms. The fact is, power banks, unlike Martin Computers, is not a manufacturer but rather only a mere distributor. This investment could lead to Do-jun losing his entire fortune. It's no different from gambling, he claims. But this only encourages Do-jun even more. He wants to see things to the end. Seeing his passion, Si Hee-yeon ultimately gives in. Commenting on how you can't fool bloodlines, he decides to go ahead with Do-jun's decision. He promises to take charge and begins heading to leave. But before walking out, he gives Do-jun one last warning. At the end of gambling lies only destruction. As he says this, Do-jun imagines the image of his doting father behind Si Hee-yeon, and he claims this will be his last gamble before he becomes an adult. A few days go by, and Si Hee-yeon once again returns to Do-jun's room. There, he reveals that he has managed to secure the contract with Powerbank at 5 million, for a total of 35 shares. Of course, this was all Do-jun's idea, and now, Si Hee-yeon can do nothing but trust his luck and wait it out. However, Do-jun is fully confident in himself, and why wouldn't he be? He's from the future, after all. Despite his confidence, though, Si Hee-yeon still has some doubts. He cautiously asks if Do-jun is really going to completely pull out of their gold mine, aka Martin Computers, and Do-jun confirms this, stating there's no reason to hold onto those shares anymore after they've already made 100-fold profit. In addition, he explains that after selling Martin's stock and buying Powerbank, the remaining amount will be given to Si Hee-yeon to manage. Next year, Do-jun will become a high school student and aims to do nothing but study in the upcoming years. Hearing this, Si Hee-yeon is surprised. For him, it's the first time he has heard of a rich kid planning to study so seriously. As per Si Hee-yeon, Do-jun is the first rank holder at his school, meaning he should have aspirations to go into S University. He asks what major Do-jun is interested in, suggesting business or economics. However, Do-jun is not like any other kid. He reveals that he plans on going to law school. a revelation that leaves Hee-yeon shaken to the core. It does make sense, though. With the world's top entrepreneurs like Yeongcheol and someone who studied economics in England, Hee-yeon, what could Do-jun really learn by going to university for economics? Damn, the kid really thought things through. In response, Hee-yeon asks if Do-jun wants to become a judge or something in the future, but that's far from the case. All Do-jun wants to do is show that a rich kid can be good at studying. There has yet to be a rich kid who has gotten into S University, and Do-jun's plan is to prove to everyone that he's smart enough to attend such a prestigious school through his own efforts. In short, it's all just a bunch of showing off. Peacocking, as they say. Hearing all this, Hee-yeon is once again left at a loss for words. Better get this guy a dictionary or something. Soon, Do-jun heads over to Yeongcheol's mansion to meet his grandfather. There, they leisurely sit around, sipping tea. As they chat, Yeongcheol asks if his grandson has looked into the schools he wants to attend. But Do-jun claims he wants to go to a normal public school since he can't see any merit in going abroad. Hearing this, Yeongcheol is disappointed. He blames Yoonji for not showing any interest in his son's education and promises to search for a prestigious school. "I will send you to the world's best high school," he exclaims. But Do-jun refuses. He expresses his desire to simply get into S University. He deems it to be the place where Korea's most scholarly students gather, showing interest in attending law school. Obviously, the old man is left shaken, asking if Do-jun wants to become a judge. But the boy laughs it off, talking about how his grandfather already knows. His ambition is to become a business manager. Consequently, he explains that the only reason he wants to go into law school is so Yeongcheol can show him off. The spoiled young brats from rich families never study hard enough to get a degree from his university, making Do-jun's success an opportunity for bragging in front of the other business tycoons. Hearing these words, Yeongcheol goes into deep thought. He begins remembering a certain meeting. On that day, the eldest grandson of the Daehyun Group's president entered S University and, naturally, it became the main topic of conversation. Of course, Yeongcheol knew all the tricks and strings that had to be pulled in order to get his grandson into that university, and hence, hearing Daehyun's president bragging made Yeongcheol sick to his stomach. As per the rumors, the secretary and about a dozen researchers were mobilized to closely investigate the university officials. Thanks to this, they persuaded the department with eloquence, and just before the deadline, successfully submitted the application. It ended up being a place to study Eastern philosophy. But even then, if it were normal circumstances, there was no way that brat was getting in. Nevertheless, even if they are the chairman of a rich family, at the end of the day, all grandfathers have the same heart. The Daehyun president started to brag so much that he didn't stop even after a year had passed. Sounds like someone has a big mouth. However, things are different for S University's law school. In that department, no sneaky tactics are possible. Hence, its position will have to be accepted by everyone. Eventually, Yeongcheol comes back to his senses, asking if his grandson will really apply to S University solely for his sake. And Do-jun, with a large smile on his face, agrees to this. This leaves Yeongcheol immensely happy. He announces that many people have made him a lot of money, but no one has ever given him such joy. As a result, he tells Do-jun to go ahead and get into S University, announcing he will give him anything he wants for the entrance ceremony. In response, Do-jun gives off a beaming smile. However, inside his heart, he promises to hold Yeongcheol accountable for this promise. Obviously, he doesn't desire anything trivial like a new car or house. Instead, he wants the power of Soonyang Group's chairman. As time went by, in July of 1994, Powerbank's public shares exceeded and got listed at the highest price of 18,000 yen per week. Due to this, the company managed to hold on to 200 billion yen at once, and Choi Jung-cheol declared an aggressive M&A. All this meant that Do-jun's 230 million investment turned into 850 million, a profit of a hopping 620 million in just 1 year. However, all good things must come to an end, and Powerbank's bubble soon popped. Of course, Do-jun pulled out and stopped his investments just in time. With this, he continues to focus on his studies for the next 3 years. During this time, he invested in Hollywood movies as a hobby. Meanwhile, his older brother, Sang-jun, also graduated from high school without any problems, although he didn't get a good enough grade and was instead sent abroad to study. Apparently, as per Do-jun, his circumstances are a blessing in disguise. Due to his situation, the family members paid him little to no attention, making it easy for him to follow his passion, music. Anyway, now that all eyes are on Doojun, the only high schooler remaining in the Soonyang family's third generation, the question lingering on everyone's mind is, will there finally be a student from the family entering this university? As the years go by, some watch with curious eyes, others with vigilance, while Doojun's parents and Yeongcheol watch in anticipation for what's about to come. Just like that, the result day finally arrives. However, one day before the results, Yeongcheol is overjoyed. Calling his acquaintances, he begins boasting about his grandson, who has achieved 39th rank in the entire country. What's more, in the Department of Liberal Arts, he's gotten 9th rank. Is this what they call a child prodigy? Or is it just a 30-year-old man pretending to be a child? As it turns out, Yeongcheol had already gotten the memo with the results the day before the announcement. Nevertheless, Yeongcheol continues his bragging. Suddenly, he gets an idea and calls forth one of his subordinates. Upon his arrival, Yeongcheol hands him the memo with the results, prompting the man to congratulate him. As such, Yeongcheol then orders the man to leak the results sneakily, telling him to make sure to have some pictures of Doojun taken tomorrow. It's explained that rich families all clamor to send their kids to prestigious universities. But, as things stand, no one can buy a grandson like Doojun with money, nor can they do so with connections. Hence, he wants to make it known just how amazing his grandson is, and the man agrees to do just that. All the while, Yeongcheol is still smiling like an idiot, as happy as can be. And just like the old man ordered, a bunch of reporters visit Doojun's residence early in the morning the next day. There, the boy genius can be seen entertaining the crowd, while the reporters snap pictures and watch his every move. As his parents watch from the sidelines, Doojun asks why these guys are here. Was it really so unthinkable that a spoiled brat was able to attain the 10th rank? Of course, the reporters try to dismiss the question. Consequently, Doojun speaks up, telling them all to hurry up and go to Jeju Island to complete the coverage. As it turns out, the first ranker is a student from there, and Doojun just wants all the articles about him written according to Yeongcheol's tastes. Obviously, the reporters are taken aback by this statement, since no one was supposed to know they were there on the old man's command. But for someone like Doojun, it's as clear as day. He can tell with just a single glance. The entire time, he keeps up appearances, ensuring his grandfather has ample bragging rights, making Yoon-gi chuckle as a result. Soon, a celebration is held to congratulate Doojun's acceptance into the prestigious university, and Yeongcheol invites all the big shots for a huge feast. At the party, Doojun is casually drinking, minding his own business, when he is suddenly confronted by Jin Yeongcheol, the one who ordered his killing in the future. Yeongcheol, with an evil grin on his face, congratulates Doojun, who also welcomes his older cousin back from his 3-year stay in Europe. Just then, Yeongcheol sneaks in closer, telling Doojun that he will leave his expected inheritance in the hands of the future general attorney. However, Doojun reveals that this is not the case. Rather, he was told to become a corporate M and a lawyer. Hearing this, Yeongcheol is left shocked, even more so after learning that Yeongcheol is the one who ordered Doojun to pursue this path. Although they didn't talk much, the old man expressed how, if Doojun wants to go to law school, he should become a lawyer instead of a judge. This leaves a strange, bewildered expression on Yeongcheol's face, which Doojun notices immediately, deeming this his happy face. Consequently, Yeongcheol then turns his attention toward Doojun, asking if he too wants to become a lawyer. In his mind, he thinks Doojun is the biggest threat he has. He is the most useful out of all his cousins, and is someone who made it into a prestigious university. He was destined to become a competitor to Yeongcheol in the future, but now, after he has been ordered by the old man to become a lawyer, he is out of the race. To him, the only thing that makes sense is that Doojun will be tasked with helping Yeongcheol with the company, providing him some relief and comfort. Also, Doojun yet again surprises him. He claims he is still unsure of what to do. The fact is, being a judge doesn't really interest him, and he is fascinated more by becoming a lawyer or prosecutor. Still, he will think things through more clearly while he attends law school. Apparently, even though he can give the exact response Yeongcheol wants to hear, he doesn't want to give this scumbag the satisfaction of having it so easily. As a result, Yeongcheol also tells his younger cousin to think about it slowly, telling him to seek him out if he ever wants out of the world of law, since he will give him a comfortable seat in the Soonyang Group. On the other hand, Doojun keeps thinking about how Yeongcheol's skills have really improved. In the last 3 years since he was in Europe, it looks like he has endured a tough lifestyle, allowing him to better his attitude. Anyway, Yoongjun invites Doojun to hang out with him after the party is over, meaning, I'll teach you step by step how nice the world is and how enjoyable life can be, and Doojun agrees. With this, Yoongjun walks away, leaving Doojun to look at him with rage, suggesting he enjoys his current lifestyle since these memories will be everything he will have in the future. As he thinks about his sweet revenge, out of nowhere, his aunt and uncle, Seo Yoon and Seo Bong, come to greet him. There, Seo Bong tells Doojun to feel free to ask him any questions if he's stuck, and he will help out since he is a direct senior of his. Of course, this is nothing but a big fat lie, which Seo Yoon mildly points out. After all, her husband didn't attend S University, but Seo Bong, trying to save face, claims he was talking about being a junior at the Liberal Arts Institute. Despite this, Seo Yoon likes the idea and tells Doojun to take her husband as his tutor, since he has already fallen out of the election, and is lazing around at home anyway. This makes Doojun recall how Seo Bong messed up in the parliamentary election held in April. As it turns out, he didn't listen to Yang Cheol's advice and tried to join the Seoul constituency. Unfortunately, they failed, even though Seo Yoon stole money from her department to fund this endeavor. Well, you reap what you sow, as they say. As a result, Doojun asks if his uncle is still planning on challenging Seoul next time as well, and Seo Bong, filled with passion, announces he sure will. He can't just finish his career at being a second-term senator, and he wants to enter the ministry as a member of the National Assembly. Regardless, now that they have reached this topic, Seo Bong reveals he has a request for Doojun. Now that Yang Cheol is in a good mood, he wants Doojun to ask a favor in supporting Seo Bong in the upcoming election. However, before he can even finish his sentence, Doojun tells him not to worry, as he knows what Seo Bong wants from him, promising to ask for Yang Cheol's support in this matter. Hearing such a response, both his aunt and uncle are overjoyed. Of course, Doojun is still hiding his true intentions. Suddenly, he decides to give these fish another bait, telling them that even if Yang Cheol doesn't support Seo Bong, he will help him personally. After all, uncle is my direct senior, he states. Obviously, Seo Bong is confused as to how Doojun, a mere teenager, will be able to help him out, but he realizes he still has a bunch of money left behind from his Bundong land. It's just been sitting in the bank all this time, so it's sure to have accumulated a lot of interest. In his mind, he has to ensure his uncle's entrance into the assembly, since that is the only way he will be able to support Doojun, by recruiting MPs to support him. This supposed kind gesture leaves Seo Bong in tears, and he gratefully shakes Doojun's hand. Eventually, the party comes to an end, and just like promised, Yoongjun takes out the guest of honor for a drink. After a short car ride, they reach their destination, a mansion somewhere in the city. According to Yoongjun, this is a place where he and his friends hang out. In fact, even his father frequently comes here, making it a good place to play alone. According to Doojun, this is the Yang Pyeong Villa owned by Youngji, Yoongjun's father. Even his past life working as a servant of Soonyang, he never came here, so he wasn't expecting to be here now. Upon their arrival, one of the guards comes dashing out. With a panicked look on his face, he tells Yoongjun how Jung Hee-sun was unable to make it here today, since she got a shooting. Doojun recognizes Hee-sun as a popular actress who broke records for the highest viewership rating. But as he falls into thought, he is quickly brought back to his senses by a loud noise. In the blink of an eye, Yoongjun slaps the guard in the face, scolding him about his failure. He expresses how important it was for Hee-sun to be here tonight. Continuing to beat the daylights out of the poor man, he ambiguously states that the guard should have just dragged her by the hair. "Do I pay you to do such a shitty job?" he questions the guard, while stomping him. Seeing this sight, Doojun is reminded of some nasty things from his past where he too was treated like trash. Consequently, he intervenes in Yoongjun's action, telling him that his attitude has ruined his mood. He suggests they just head back home after witnessing the state of things, leaving Yoongjun speechless. Seeing this aggressive side of Doojun, Yoongjun is left in cold sweats. Making up an excuse about how his younger cousin is supposed to be the main character today, he decides to spare the poor guard, telling him to be thankful to Doojun for saving him today. With that, he dismisses the guard, who is utterly powerless to do anything, and simply heads back to his car. However, as he does so, Doojun calls out to him, asking if he could drop him home after he's done with his entertainment, and the guard accepts, not like he has any other choice. Meanwhile, Yoongjun asks what the rush is. As far as he's concerned, Doojun can hang out with him until tomorrow afternoon, but Doojun refuses, claiming that meeting so many people at the party has left him completely exhausted. But in his mind, he's as happy as can be. Apparently, he's just gotten an opportunity he didn't expect to come so early. He now has no need to waste time at this party after all, since he now has a chance to make Jin Yeongcheol's faithful servant his own. Anyway, they enter the villa and immediately start drinking. Yoongjun decides to start off with some weaker drinks, and is surprised to see Doojun's high alcohol tolerance, not to mention his proper drinking etiquette. Korea has a lot of strange drinking customs, if you didn't know. As they sip away at the booze, Doojun decides to ask something of his older cousin, questioning if Doojun prefers becoming a judge or a lawyer. To Yoongjun, it seems like a tricky question. No matter how much he contemplates it, the question will merely look like little Doojun trying to act like an adult. After hoisting his drink, Yoongjun expresses that Yoon Hyunwoo has Hakjae, his trusted secretary, by his side. Similarly, his father, Youngji, also has two close aides. From Yoongjun's perspective, those people are nothing but strangers. We are family, he announces. Even though they are cousins, he considers them as close as siblings. Obviously, this rambling confuses Doojun, but Yoongjun continues, explaining that during his time in Europe, if there's one thing he has learned, it's that no matter how faithful the lower class jobs may appear, that is actually never the case. At the end of the day, everyone has their own agendas and different things planned. Listening to his cousin speak, Yoongjun is gobsmacked, if that's even a real word. From his perspective, it seems like Yoongjun has simply twisted the story of his distrusting nature to make it the fault of others. Nevertheless, it's not like Yoongjun doesn't understand the desires of the lower class. The reality is that transitioning from being the one receiving money to becoming the one paying it is a difficult task. One cannot simply transition over like nothing happened. But it's different with family, especially since siblings share the role of giving and taking. Alas, these philosophical musings won't affect Doojun in the least. If this was the real Doojun, these words could have manipulated him, but not our boy, who knows the true extent of his greed. In reality, Yoongjun is someone who hates sharing so much that he sent his biological brother, Ki Yoongjun, to prison. Anyway, back to the topic. Yoongjun expresses that he couldn't care less about Doojun becoming a lawyer, because what he wants is for this young genius to stay by his side. I will make you the number 2 of the Soonyang Group, he announces. Apparently, no one in the family is fit to play this role. They are all budding sprouts. Simply aging and growing mature doesn't give one the ability to run a company, not to mention one of this size. Therefore, the best course of action will be for both Doojun and Yoongjun to join hands to achieve great things. But even after all of this, Doojun's mind is filled with doubts. He wonders if this is just a way of showing courtesy or whether Yoongjun is truly looking for a reliable right-hand man. Just then, out of nowhere, 2 women come barging into the room. Seeing these girls, Doojun recognizes them as actresses he's seen on TV before. As the girls cozy up, Doojun decides it's best if he leaves. Suddenly, he gets up and walks out, stating that he's tired and wants to return home. As such, Yoongjun claims he will contact him later, though he's shocked by how the young boy wasn't even fazed by these beautiful women. Is this what they call a honey trap? Lucky guy. As he leaves, he takes a breather on the front porch. Though the soju is still in his body, it feels strange, though he feels better now after getting some fresh air. Regardless, he then begins walking over toward the guard from earlier, who is seen dozing off in his car. Seeing the slap marks on his face, Doojun is deeply pained, left wondering why and who is trying to live so difficultly. Nevertheless, he gets into the car's front seat, waking up the guard, who is taken aback. The guard suggests Doojun sit in the back where it's more comfortable, but he refuses, claiming he isn't an important person or anything. Consequently, they both leave on their journey. On the way, Doojun inquires if the guard works in the strategic department, but hearing this, the guard is caught off guard. He asks how Doojun knows this, and he explains that he has talked about this topic with his grandfather, aka the chairman. Thanks to this, he knows that the department is split into 2 parts, one that has graduated from prestigious universities doing actual strategic work, and one that's filled with people who clean up after the immature kids of the family. This second group consists of people from low-tier universities, and judging by how uncomfortable the guard gets talking about this, Doojun suspects him to be from the latter, just like he was in the past. Let's not forget, that our boy was bottom-level trash at the company in his past life as well, hence the reason he knows all this. All the while, just being part of this conversation is enough to turn the guard red with rage. And this is all due to embarrassment, a sense of shame. Seeing this, Doo-jun tries to calm him down, reasoning that he is actually much more fortunate than the first-class graduates. The fact is that Yeongcheol doesn't have long to live. When he passes, his children will try to tear apart the organization out of their own greed. Most probably, Youngji will come out on top in this battle, and at that time, the guard can sell all the secret information he has gathered for a hefty price. Hearing this, the guard lashes out. Having his loyalty questioned, he is enraged and raises his voice. Alas, it looks like he has forgotten his place. With a single glare, Doo-jun warns him to be careful not to speak so impolitely, and the threat is enough to shut the guard up for good. Anyway, now that the conversation is over, Doo-jun decides to get some shut-eye, telling the guard to wake him up once they've arrived at his home. As fate would have it, the year 1997 turned out to be a rather eventful year. After everything, Hyundai Steel, a major steel mill building in Daejeon, started to collapse. Along with it, its 22 domestic subsidiaries also came into a position of disaster. Thanks to this, the major banks were shaken up, since about 70 entities were in danger. And now, after having injured prey in front of their eyes, the hunters' fight to seize control has started. At Yeongcheol's study, a meeting is held on this topic. There, the old man learns that Hyundai Steel is worth 2.37 trillion won. According to him, if this is the value of the company, Daehyun, their competitor, will use this amount as a bid. If so, he asks his managers what they should bid, and Youngjun steps up to the plate, expressing they can offer 1.8 trillion. As per him, this is the maximum amount Soonyang can offer. However, to Yeongcheol, it is obvious Daehyun will win the bidding, but Youngjun stays steadfast, remarking that it isn't worth it to get a loan over this. Moreover, he claims that things will not lead to a fight over money. But hearing this, Yeongcheol is even more confused. In an open bid, what on earth will they fight over, if not money? Then, Youngjun reveals that Soonyang is the best company that would create the most synergistic effect when acquiring Hyundai. Since Daehyun already has ownership of the means, the effect will be insignificant for them. As a result, Yeongcheol orders a report on the synergistic effect to be made, telling his subordinates to make it so good that the judges are left impressed. With this, he asks if anyone else has another plan. That is when Han Jong-cheol, the president of Soonyang Constructions, chimes in. He states they should offer 2.5 trillion. According to him, there is no difference between Soonyang and Daehyun in the eyes of the creditors. At the end of the day, the government will not care who gets a hold of the company, and hence is inevitable they will have to pay a higher price to avoid any scandals. Of course, Yeongcheol asks where they will get the remaining money, but Han Jong has an idea for that as well. As it just so happens, Soonyang Construction has obtained an apartment lot, and once the land is pledged, they will be able to get a loan for it, 700 billion won, to be precise. Still, Yeongcheol is not completely satisfied. He asks how they will repay the loan for the apartment lot, especially considering how they cannot build and sell apartments on land put out as collateral. However, Han Jong tells the old man not to worry about such matters. I'll clean that up within the construction process, he explains. And this, to Yeongcheol, is the most reasonable answer. Solve the problem and skip the process. Even if there is something shady going on with this idea, Yeongcheol can simply feign ignorance because he truly has no idea what will happen. Hearing all this, Yeongcheol is now in a good mood and begins joking around, while Youngji and Youngjun stare at Han Jong with rage. Later on, just as predicted, Daehyun began considering 2.3 trillion for the bid. Consequently, Hakjae asks if Yeongcheol is really planning on paying 2.5 trillion, explaining that will cause the group's funds to falter for a while. As a result, the old man then asks what Doo-jun thinks about all this, who is revealed to be sitting in the study as well. Obviously not fully aware of the situation, Doo-jun asks for a hint, and Yeongcheol expresses how, if he were to sell a tree, he would like to sell it to someone who would care for it, rather than someone who would chop it down and resell it as firewood. Listening to these words, Hakjae is flabbergasted. Chairman, do you think Daehyun will try to resell Hyundai Steel? He questions, but Yeongcheol refrains from answering in concrete terms, instead asking Doo-jun if this was enough of a hint. From this statement alone, Do-jun is able to see past everything. He reveals that after taking over, Daeki-yoon will build and sell apartments on the land owned by Hyunwoo and sell its equipment to foreign countries. In that case, Hyunwoo Steel will disappear without a trace. However, if Soonyang takes over, things will be different. They are entering the steel industry for the first time, and hence they will try their best to normalize it instead, or at least that's what they have to portray. Nevertheless, even Do-jun doubts whether this method will actually work. The fact is that Dae-yoon has a good network as well, and even if they sell, they will have a lot of people supporting them. Therefore, Do-jun asks what his grandfather is planning to bid, and he replies he wants to pay 1 trillion won and $1 billion, though he would spend more if he had the money. Hence, he tells Hak-jae to sprinkle the bait, claiming he will do the fishing himself. Hearing this, Do-jun deems the bait to be the media, the best way to spread bait widely. By taking advantage of the press, newspapers, and other media outlets, they can put pressure on the judges by saying the steel industry must be saved. But no matter how much pressure he puts, isn't going 500 billion one lower a little too dangerous? Yoon Hyunwoo isn't fazed in the least. Do-jun, keep your eyes open and watch what this grandpa does, he announces, leaving Do-jun trembling with excitement. Anyway, now that this is over, Yoon Hyunwoo remarks on how Do-jun's entrance ceremony is tomorrow. He suggests that Do-jun buy soju for students, whom he deems to have future potential. In addition, he reveals that his aide has been selected. Eventually, Do-jun takes his leave, and as he exits the mansion, he is greeted by his gaffer, Kim Yoon-seok, assistant manager of the strategy department. Upon their first meeting, Kim immediately gets into the car and begins driving Do-jun home. On the way, Do-jun asks who put Kim as his bodyguard, learning it was Lee Hak-jae. Hearing this, Do-jun feels relieved since Hak-jae is supposed to be a trustworthy fellow. As such, he then asks who Kim has to report to. Of course, Kim tries to feign ignorance, but Do-jun doubles down, ultimately leading Kim to reveal he will be reporting everything to Hak-jae as well. In response, Do-jun tells Kim to report everything fully. The fact is, since Hak-jae is Kim's boss, he has to follow all his commands. Meanwhile, in his mind, he comments on how he will soon know what choices Kim will make.